Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Grafton Select Board meeting here for November 9th, 2021. I'd like to call the meeting order for 6 p.m. First order of business, I'd like everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. So first up here tonight, we have the 2020 Census Precinct Map for the town of Grafton, and tonight we have Kenny the Valley Town Clerk, and I believe Brian Cizerco should be joining.
I think he's on the Zoom call.
Excellent, as well. You want to come on up?
I do, and I have some stuff to hand to you.
Oh,
Because we didn't get anything, unfortunately, until yesterday. So I'm just going to take a copy and I will give it to you.
Yes, definitely. I was
And I make
sending
copies
that
for them
telepathically
too, if they want
too.
to. That's just
It works.
stuff.
Yeah, we're so good.
And then, oh, you're going to need these. Those are more of those.
And that's
And then the third one.
Yeah.
They are actually the same as those, yep. And I'll explain what I have there.
Here, I can pass them down, yeah.
Guess we'll go this way.
Take two this way.
Take two there, small.
All right, so what I just handed you is, the larger one is our current precinct map with the 5 precincts. The second one is the proposed one. And then the third sheet is our blocks, which shows our population, and it breaks it down by demographics, just so you have some of the information in front of you as how it was broken down. But to start off, obviously, this is a process that's done every 10 years with the census. The 2020 census was, let's start over. This is done every 10 years with the census. So in 2020, we did it again. And this is what the proposed map is. In 2010 was the last one where this map comes from. And in 2010, our population after the census was 17,765. And after the figures from this year, we've bumped up to 19,664. So we started a kind of a working group in-house once we knew we had to discuss if there were going to be any changes with our precincts. And it was Evan and Chris McGoldrick started with us in the beginning, and myself and Brian, and then it kind of just fizzled down to Brian and I for some of the things that had to be done. And we kind of all worked together, discussed some things. And how it works is the Census Bureau will assist with sending out maps to you to help with any changes. And we have done that in the past, and we decided to continue with their recommendation. And with that, we are hoping to stay with the 5 precincts. But as you will see, there are some shifts in the lines. So precincts 3 and 4 and 2 and 3, there are some changes where some people will be changing precincts to adjust to the population limits, which you cannot exceed 4,000 per precinct. So I don't know specifically what questions you have, but we opted to stay with the 5 precincts, knowing that in 10 years with future forecasting of construction and whatnot, and new projects that we're going to have some drastic changes that we'll have to discuss, maybe going to 6 precincts and figure out population. So for everybody, this kind of was like what we decided we should stick with. So we're hoping that you will accept it, and then it will also be accepted by the state and stay this way for the next 10 years.
Okay. Thank you, Candy.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
that. Does any of the board members have any questions for Candy?
Yes.
The residents whose precincts changed, how are they notified?
We will, once they're accepted, we will send them a letter, anybody who is affected, letting them know of that change. So that's why it's kind of steps. So the first step is to do this, and then we would, once we know our approval, we'll get those letters out to everybody.
Do you know approximately how many residents were affected with?
I don't have that number now off the top of my head, but there were, I think it was what, less than 100, and Brian might remember that too if he's on, but I think it was like 100, give or take,
Okay.
with the shifts.
100 addresses?
Well, we
100
counted
voters.
individuals, I think, just who is in the home, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Any other
If I may, real quick, this is Brian. What we came up with in-house is not what the state came back with, but the state's precinct lines balance things out better than what we came up with in-house. And you probably, like between precincts 2 and 3, you're looking at south of, was it Merriam and Meadowbrook are now in precinct 2, where they used to be. They used to be in 3. And precinct 4 has changed quite a bit with the cut line between 3 and 4, but that was all just to balance out in, population wise. So in the end, you're probably talking no more than 500 total voting people, I would imagine.
500.
Thanks, Brian. Anyone have any
Thanks,
questions?
I just have a comment. I just want to say thank you to you and Brian and Candy. I feel like this is, in my opinion, the best case scenario because we're keeping 5 precincts. Not a lot of residents are affected. I think you did a great job. So
Well, thank you.
you.
Thank you. I have to admit, and I'll give him props, Brian, obviously knowing more of the boundaries, took a big role in that part. We worked together, but I mean, without his assistance, obviously, he knows them more. So, I mean, he
Well
was-
done to both of you.
yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Settle down now.
We're not handing out money.
So, the next step is I think I gave Joanne before she left the vote too, if you are okay to accept it on what you have to do, and we just have to get that signed, and I can send that off to the state with the map and everything else.
I don't have anything in the packet, but what vote do you need us to consider for tonight?
I didn't bring my phone either. It's just a document that just says that you guys, do you want me to go get it? Will that be okay if I get it and come back?
Yeah, I would like to have the board evaluate that before we
Sure.
take the motion.
So I will
Yeah.
get that, and actually I can email it to William too, and he'll have it in electronic, and I'll print out a copy of what it should say.
Okay.
All right, I'll be right back.
All right.
Cool.
I'm in the going from 4 to 3 map here. You are? Yep, down here in Elmwood.
That's why they did it that way.
I can't.
I'm pretty sure they did.
Yeah, I
Screw
can't,
her right up.
I can't see myself here, but I think I may have shifted from 2 to 3.
So, William, I think this probably warrants a press release or definitely communication to make sure for, there's 500 voters that are impacted, that they have multiple forms of communication to them. So we'll just let them know.
Of course, we can definitely do that.
Yeah,
Do you think this could affect FinCom at all?
Probably.
it's possible. Yep.
I was just thinking that too, but even going back, FinCom was really, if you look at the membership, it's interesting. It's still 9 members. Originally, we had 3 precincts for years, and then we went to 4, and now we're at 5. We never really adjusted the membership of that committee based on the number of precincts. So,
No, but like that each represented. So like when I was on FinCom, I was representing 4 per se, but now I got shifted to 3. So that's
Right.
what I was thinking. And how did that affect it? If it affects it at all, I don't know.
yeah, I think that's up to the, I don't know off the top of my head, people's addresses. But yeah, that's something that will have to get looked at, I think, at the end of the year.
Oh, if I can real quick, guys. One of the reasons why we went with this proposal was because it was more defined as far as the boundaries, using the railroad, the power lines, things like that, where there were no properties affected.
Yep.
Because the original proposal, it went actually through houses,
Oh, jeez.
where then like Candy actually talked to the people at the state, and they were like, well, if it's an issue, then you got to find out where they lay their head, as far as like where they sleep in their house and stuff like that. So it was
That's
That's really making a split house.
Wow.
I don't have to
Yeah.
change, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna
And then
change
don't
my
move
room
your
out.
furniture.
exactly. It was.
You have to move your bed
I
to
was
the south
scratching
side.
my head. I'm like, how is this so difficult? But yeah, we came up with this as a result of just clearly defining the boundaries.
Good.
And going forward, next time through, with all of what's going on with the like up on Pine Street, and knowing that Institute Village is going to be coming into play. Precinct 1 didn't have any changes this time around, but it's definitely going to be changed come next round. So
Sorry.
All right. Brian, we're just waiting for Candy to come back. Does anyone else have any questions for Brian?
Brian, do you know how long, this is probably a question for Candy, but do you have any idea how long the state takes to approve this? And when it will go into effect?
so this is a draft right now, and as soon as you all approve it, it gets sent to the state for them to verify that it's been approved, and then it goes into effect
Okay.
right after that.
Okay. So probably a matter of a month or so.
I would imagine so.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so thank you, Candy. So what I have in front of us here tonight is a vote regarding a memo regarding the Town of Grafton 2020 re-precincting process, where it says, we, the undersigned, hereby certify that the meeting held on November 9, 2021, that the Select Board voted to accept as presented by the Town Clerk the 2020 re-precincting plan for the Town of Grafton. True copy attest was signed by the Town Clerk, Ms. LaValle, as well as the Board upon ratification. Does anyone want to see this? Anyone have any questions? Does anyone want to make a motion?
Sure.
Thank you.
I make a motion that we vote to accept as presented by the town clerk the 2020 re-precincting plan for the town of Grafton.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Just want to thank you again very much for coming in tonight, you and Brian, for doing this every 10 years, right? So
Yes.
we'll see you in 10 years. But if there's any further discussion, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried unanimous. Thank you.
Awesome.
you.
All right.
Thanks, Kenny.
I'll just pick that up tomorrow. Is that easier? Or do you want me to wait?
If you wait a
Yeah,
second,
just
you'll
sign
get the signatures you need tonight.
Yes.
If you would just be so kind as to make a copy, scan it, and just send it to the whole board,
I sure can. Right before I go into the office.
appreciate it. All right, I think that does it. I appreciate it, Candy, very much.
Thank you
We'll hand this
all.
off to you, and I'll
Thank
go
you,
let,
Candy.
the
Thanks,
department know
Brian.
they can come in.
Thanks,
Thank
Candy.
you all.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you, Peter.
This is fun though.
I know. It's like artwork for a home, you know?
Yeah. I have the old, the historical, like they have a townhouse. I have that in my.
Nice.
dining room.
That's what an asshole.
Have a map of
You're gonna be
Boston.
one of those cranky
Same
old-
different. I gotta
No.
go for Grafton.
That's okay.
As long as I stay warm.
There you go.
I get cold. Hey, Paul.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Oh, this is awesome.
This most people we had in the meeting in a
I
while.
know, this is so exciting.
There's a clown car outside. Nobody asked you, Mr. Mead.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming in tonight. As part of our agenda, I know this has been a few weeks in the making, but real quick, if I could ask tonight, the four of you could just introduce yourselves for the public, that would be great. If you want to start with yourself.
Bob Egan, Captain of Station 2.
Rick Lane, Captain of Station 3.
Mickey Garthia, Fire Chief.
Paul Canoia, Captain, Station 1.
All right, thank you. So tonight, as the board has discussed over the past few meetings, we just wanted to have a discussion. We have had some internal discussions here about what we want to talk about, but I'm sure there might be some other questions that get asked. And so I'm going to open this up to the members of the board to go ahead if there are questions that they would like to ask, or do you want to just hear from the department first? What's your all's pleasure?
I'd like to just hear from, from the officers, that's for sure.
All right, so
Okay.
at our officers meeting, we feel that an interim chief or an acting chief should come from within the department. And with that, that person would not be going for the fire chief's full-time job. People more than capable of running the department. We felt that we're gonna be going through, the department's gonna be going through a transition. Regardless, and instead of trying to go through two transitions, bringing in an outside person, not knowing what's gonna happen, and then transitioning again, we feel it's more comfortable, we have the people that are capable of doing it. There should be one person doing it. Other than that, Captain Rick Lane is gonna be the spokesperson for the officers at this point.
So as an opening statement, I'd like to say the officers of the Grafton Fire Department would like to thank the Select Board and Town Administrator for inviting us tonight to discuss our thoughts on a plan moving forward and to answer any questions you may have. We have all met and reviewed and discussed the questions emailed to us from this board and have reached what we believe to be the best operating plan for the department and the town. As Chief Garthia said, he trusts in his command staff and firefighters, and this is what we do every day. So we have no problem with that. The outside chief, we kind of ruled out right away as an interim for the same reasons that the chief talked about. It's very disruptive. It's very, walking on eggshells. Who is this? What's he expect from us? Stuff like that. And he's short term. So we are very confident in how we handle fire situations and fire calls, mutual aid companies, and everything that we do. So we have fortified a plan that doesn't veer much off what we do when someone's not there to begin with. So if the chief's out of town or any of us are out of town, the next man, senior man, steps up.
Thank you, Captain. Does any board members have any questions for the department? Colleen?
Do you guys have an internal candidate in mind?
We do.
Yeah.
Is that something you're willing to share at this time?
We can. So we feel that Captain Canoia would be the best choice at this particular time. Paul's in town every day, where I'm in Framingham every day as senior captain, and Bob's traveling around the state at his job all day long. Paul's in town. He has a town vehicle already. He has radio in it. He already is on board with Evan on a daily basis if any of that has to happen. We do believe, like we said, we had discussed the three captains. We're going to step up anyway, and that's how we work, but we need an interim. We need a point person. There has to be a point person in step. And I know you guys have talked about hard feelings going up and then going back to being captain. There's no hard feelings. We all accept the responsibilities that we enroll in when we enroll in it, and the guys behind us, all the lieutenants and the other officers and firefighters, have full respect with Paul and the other officers, whoever's in charge, and they're very comfortable. So that's how we feel it should go.
Any other questions? Anybody?
I had the same question as Colleen.
Okay.
So,
Held it.
yeah, I did.
Ray, Matt?
No, I'm very confident in what you've come up with. I don't have a problem with it at all, not one bit.
Okay, I guess I have one more question. So, in terms of this board determining, our process as far as a search committee going out to find the full-time candidate who will be here long-term. Are there any concerns from the department on time frame, for Mr. Canoyer? Just in terms of, if it's, I can do this for 3 months, I can do this for 6 months, but no longer, because in some ways we're talking about this process pretty much starting over, I think, is the direction we're going with a search committee, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of timeline.
Well, we'll be working with Chief Gothy before he retires to make sure that, we're in pace with the budget and things that have to be done before that time as we go into the fiscal year and for June. We would love to have somebody in place by then, just like we would love to have someone in place by now, but
Right.
it doesn't matter who's there or who's not there. We're going to do what we do when the phones go off. So that part of it is not an issue.
Okay.
And like I said, we're just looking to keep it as smooth as possible, the way it's been right along, and not to have any kind of extra disruption, like the chief said, some extra stuff that we don't have to deal with.
Anyone else have any other questions?
I have one more question, and that is just with all of Paul's other responsibilities in town, just turning over to Evan. Do you have any concerns about him taking on more responsibilities, if that's the way the board decides to go?
No, Paul and I sat down together already.
Great.
It's gonna be a collaborative effort too.
Yeah.
He's not gonna be by himself.
Right.
Good.
So, but Paul and I met kind of early on, just to kick it around a little bit, and we're confident with, the amount of flexibility he has in his day to be able to manage that stuff unless other people are around.
We also have covered that issue where, depending on who's in town and who responds at any particular time, if Bob, it's in north end town or center, and if he responds and Paul hears him go on, Paul's not gonna go on just because it's a, smoke detectors or a CO alarm or something like that. He's got a job to do during the day. He's not gonna go just for the sake of going.
Okay.
We now have a deputy chief who will be in town a lot, and when he goes on the air, the same reason, none of us. We did decide that the 3 captains would be responding in their cars towards the scene, and just not, if first one's on, we'll go to the stations. Otherwise, we'll go to the scene, and we rely on our lieutenants and our firefighters to bring the apparatus and take care of the situation.
I think the choice with Paul is he has administration skills already because he's running the DPW now, so in the sewer department. So he has those skills in place already, and that's what we were looking for as well. And Paul fits it perfect.
He also resides in the center of town, so going to either end of town, he would be the quickest than for me to go from south to north and Bob to go from north to south. So that's a lot quicker response time as well.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
So just want to be clear with what happens with the deputy. So the interim would be sort of the top of the command structure, and then it would be deputy next,
Right.
and then moving on to the rest of the officers.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So Paul, you feel like this is sustainable for the next?
Yeah, it's certainly sustainable for the,
It doesn't
3,
sound
4,
like it's
5,
wildly
6
different
months.
than what we're doing already.
right, it's, we had 5 calls today, from
Yep.
7 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the chief was out of town and Eric was out of town. So, we, went off flawlessly, the truck responded to every call.
Yep.
It's, there's days it's busy and there's days when it's not, but we can, I can certainly, my kids are out of the house, so I certainly have some time. I'd rather see the process, slow down, get a real, take our time and get some real quality people. So we can move the whole thing forward as we all desire to do.
And with our I am responding, which comes on our phones as well, we can see who is responding. Paul will know right away who is signing on, how many guys he's got to his ability at that, especially during the day. He knows the guys that live in town, work in town, are home during the day, aren't home during the day. He knows that, so when he sees who's on, he can make those decisions a lot quicker than anyone.
So, Captain, I don't know if I know what you're talking about there, but maybe for the general public, they may not know what that is. Can you just give a brief explanation of what that application is?
So the I am responding is a program that Chief Gothy brought in, and we have been working on and adding to on a daily basis. We have it in our stations. It comes up. It shows the guys that are responding, where they're coming from, how far away they are. If they're
It's all on these.
It's all on the phones. If they're delayed for any reason, they would say that they are responding, but it's gonna be a delay. They're coming from out of town. Guys who are coming from town are right there. Map comes up, shows us where the situation is at hand that we're going to, the streets, cross streets. So it's a nice feature. And that's,
The biggest feature of that, it starts with the dispatcher. The dispatcher puts out the I am responding. And that dispatcher will have it up on their screen if who's responding. And we've had many times that we've had a station get toned out, and she would call me and say, we've only have one person responding so far for that station. Okay, tone out another station. So it works out pretty well. And it works all over the world.
right.
That's good, thank you. Appreciate that. Anyone else have any questions?
Have you worked out, additional compensation?
So that would be automatic, as far as we're concerned. The compensation would be, Paul would step up as interim and he would get, chief.
Well, Evan and I would, yeah, without, we have to.
They'll
No,
work
no,
that
I'm
out.
not talking about,
Yeah.
I'm talking more about if Bob's covering on a weekend.
Right.
Or, you know,
It's something, obviously something we never discussed.
Yeah, we
Prior
haven't
to, we do
worked
it,
that
we
out
do it
quite
now,
yet.
and we've been doing it
Yeah,
for years, so
we
it's
don't,
not.
we don't change that from
Hasn't-
what when we respond, and as we are. And then we're just filling that role and being the person in charge.
Okay. Any other questions?
Do you guys have any other concerns you want to address with us?
No, like I say, this is what we do 24/7. We're very familiar with it. We're very comfortable with it, and it really doesn't faze us. So we do what we do. So when the tones go off, we know what we have to do, and we know who steps up and who's in charge, and pass it on, change it over. Whether someone's got to do something else, someone's got to leave. It's been going on that way for years. You know, we've been taught by the best. You know, that have left us, retired or soon to retire. We're ready to handle this, and we believe it's the best thing for the department as well as the town, not to have any other disruption that we don't need.
So it seems like to me, what I'm hearing tonight is the number one concern is just limit the disruption while we go through the process again of, searching and hiring a new chief. Do you have any questions for us? Something that we may not have thought of, and I know I sent you the links to the past few meetings and so on and so forth, but is there anything that you have for us?
You did bring up on that questionnaire about the search committee. So whether you decide to go with 7 or 5, that doesn't really matter to us, but we do believe that the fire department should definitely have representation in that search committee.
Okay.
Can I just ask one last question? I just want to hear from the officers and the chief. There's a number of recommendations that were put out by the fire study committee, of which there were members of the fire department. Obviously, we're putting ourselves in a situation where those recommendations are going to be paused, right?
No, I don't, Matt, I'll say, we currently have the best trained, best equipped fire department this town has ever had. Without a doubt, from when I got on 38 years ago, when the chief got on, and when you got on. There's no doubt in my mind. And everybody, we know, we know we're moving forward. We know, everybody keeps telling us change is difficult, change is this. They're not going to embrace the change, and they've never spoken. I talked to the MRI study people, but very few other people did. And I don't, everybody's an adult. Everybody has a career outside of this, whether it's a school teacher or a nurse or a career firefighter in another community. We're all, the last 20 months has taught us anything. It's that change is going to happen. So we're ready for it. We've discussed, the 10, 12 of us at our meetings that, we know what's in that study. We're ready, we know what, on the administrative end of it, what needs to be done, and we're ready to, to hit the ground running, bring everybody in, just so we can, in 4, 5, 6 months, we can leave, whoever's gonna take over is gonna hopefully take over some things that, the way we envision, the department moving, the way we would like it to go, collaboratively build some groups to work on different pieces, whether it's SOPs or vehicle maintenance or building maintenance or equipment testing, just build some different groups to get that, get those things accomplished, so we can leave it to whoever's taking the job in July.
Yep.
We hand them something that's a workable a workable situation.
Okay, so I just want to respond to that. First, I just want to express my unequivocal confidence in the fire department operations, and the current command staff, and officers. I just want to make that crystal clear. The trucks are rolling out, people are picking up the phones, incidents are being responded to, inspections are being done. I have no concerns about that whatsoever. I wasn't talking about the cultural change or any of that.
I just wanted,
The sort of the heart of my question was, we had planned on bringing in a full-time chief that had a fairly long list of responsibilities to do some of the things that you just talked about with, SOGs and SOPs and things like that. Obviously, those things are not we're not bringing on a full-time position. I just want to hear from the officers that you guys are okay with that, the pace of that work not being what it would have been, and that we're okay waiting for some of those recommendations that
We're not going to be waiting. We're going to work on that
so
as a group.
it's your intention then to move forward with as if we had a full-time chief. You're going to take those responsibilities on, distribute them, and work on them.
yeah, we'll,
Is that-
form a subcommittee of, firefighters, officers to gather them from, we have some that we worked on 25 years ago. Gather what we have, go to, 5 other fire departments of similar size and nature,
Yep.
and get what they have. We're not reinventing the wheel, and get them to, over the next few months, get those to where we as the group would like to see them.
That's great to hear.
Well, with the, once something's in place and if it's working, somebody's gonna come in and likely not change it, say, well, that's working, I'm not gonna touch that, I'm gonna focus over here
Sure.
instead. So if we can get what we want, it's, self-serving, obviously, but it's,
I love that. No, it will make the whole transition much more seamless and smooth.
Right.
And
But we also,
workable, and you'll have the buy-in that you need because
Yeah.
you'll be making the changes. I love it. I think it's great.
we also understand that the person that does come in could change some of the stuff that we put in place, which is, we understand that. That's a good possibility. But like Paul said, if we have it in place and it's working, more than likely that he would adopt it, or she would adopt it. As a study committee, Ray was chair of the study committee that we submitted. We chewed that whole MRI study up very well, piece by
Yeah.
piece, and Ray can attest that we went through it line by line and took out what we thought were priorities and moved them up, and what we thought the new chief coming in or the command staff could handle and take care of, and move those down. And we submitted that to the board, this board. So you guys have that in place already, and we're on board with all of it.
Great. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
There is a hand in the audience, or we?
Oh, yeah, I just want to ask the board first if they have anything to say, and I'll address that in a second. Thank you for reminding me. I just want to say, before we move on here, I appreciate you coming in. I know this town is grateful for the department that it has. It's understandable that changes are coming. I think evolution in any department, they have to go through this. And it's great hearing from all of you here tonight, seeing the support that I've seen in the room tonight with all of the other lieutenants and officers and people who operate within the department. It just, I want to echo Matt's statement. Very proud of you guys. Thank you very much for coming up with a short-term plan for us while we work through this again. If anyone else has anything else to say, I do have one person in the attendees list who would like to come in. Does the board want to entertain anyone from the public at this time?
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
Sure.
someone in the room too.
There is someone in the room?
Yes.
Okay, why not?
Oh, that's what you
Yeah.
might not have. That's
Oh,
what
no,
I was.
I've
Yeah,
got-
I was talking about.
Sorry, I've got someone in
I
the
didn't
Zoom
even
meeting.
know about that one. All right,
We're
cool.
talking about that.
Everybody can talk.
We're gonna do this in this way. Okay, so why don't you come on up? I don't have another chair for you. We took the podium away.
It's fine.
Sit on my leg.
Awkward.
You can talk on that one as long as you don't touch anything.
Thank you. I just wanted to come point out a couple
You
things.
just give your name. I'm real
Oh,
fast.
sorry. Tim Rodrigue, Airport Road. I wanted to come out and just, originally I was coming in to testify that I think you should move to the interim chief from an outside source. But based upon what I hear, it sounds like there's an agreement to move forward this way. Couple of things I think need to be done as you move down this road is you need to set goals and objectives and benchmarks. So if the captains and everybody aren't getting there, you need to revisit it and maybe go back to the interim chief thought. This report is what, 3 years old? Why hasn't anything been done up to this date by these captains and now, no offense, I know they don't have a full-time job. Something to be aware of going forward. You have the SAFER grant and the AFG grants. You have the state equipment grant that's coming out. You have senior safe grants. In order to comply with those grants, you have to be submitting MFRs on a yearly basis. A review from the Department of Fire Services shows we're not in compliance with that. So coming out of the gate, you're going to be in trouble for next year on grants. So there's going to be things that you have to address quickly and in a positive manner. So you've got to set goals and objectives. This is going to work for the new person. So.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay.
Thanks, Tim.
We have Terry Turgeon, who has just joined the meeting. Good evening, Terry. Can you hear us okay?
I can, Peter. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, Peter, as chair, through you, I want to first of all thank the Grafton Fire Department to be here and thank them for their service. Paul, I'm wondering, had you applied to chief prior to this, and are you interested in applying for the position long term? And secondly, what are all of you interested in the characteristics, both four of you, but also your crews? Seeing in the characteristics of next chief. Can you expand upon that? Because I think that one of the things that's become clear through this is that maybe you guys had not been part of the process up to this date. So can you share that with the public?
I'll answer the first part. Our recommendation to the board was an internal chief that won't be applying for the job. So I did not apply previously, and I would not be applying in the second round. Did that go over?
Yep, we heard.
Okay.
Yeah, she just had her moment, and I put her back into the attendees
Okay.
list here. There's the other part of that. You guys can or you don't have to, or if you don't have an answer for it, it's up to you. She did ask about what characteristics, and I asked I believe Terry had asked if you guys have been part of the process. I do know that there were 3 representatives from the fire department from Station 1, Station 2, Station 3 on the last search committee. But Terry had asked that question about, the characteristics of the next leader. I don't know if you want to answer that.
So basically, we trust in the system that was in place, that the search committee did their due diligence, asked the right questions. They went through an assessment, and they were graded and rated, which would hopefully happen again to anybody coming in. It is going to be different. It's going to be a full-time, everyday chief, when we've always been a call department from the top down. So that's something that, we've worked with many outside chiefs at different scenes and different trainings. We're comfortable with that type of command and the type of full-time chief, what it brings. And again, a lot of the stuff that's fallen through the cracks because of we all have full-time jobs and we only have so many part-time hours other than responding to calls to review and look at grants and all that kind of stuff. So that's going to help us. That's going to help us have someone that can stay on track with that and make sure that we're up to speed with it. And like Paul said, we're gonna form and we're gonna work on some of that stuff from the day one as a group.
Any of the board members want to address any of the questions from Terry or from Tim before we move on?
Just one comment, I guess. So the fire department has been involved all along. I just want to be clear about that in the fire study committee as well as the search committee, and obviously we're having an open dialogue here. Paul, so if we're to move forward with this, are you comfortable coming back to us with looking at the study and just outlining a plan with the rest of the officers in terms of
Yeah, I mean, as Bob said earlier, it's going to be a collaborative effort. Yeah, I'll be the head.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
it's good. We work well together, and that's
Absolutely.
something that needs to be said. But characteristics of a chief, one of my thoughts, at major incidents, the incident command system is delegate. The chief delegates an ops officer, a safety officer, a water supply officer, different divisions, and we all move in those directions. We do our jobs, but then we all come back to the station and everybody just, hangs on to their little part and doesn't want to give it up and doesn't want to delegate. And it's not so much here, but it's the nature of the job. I think the next chief needs to involve just more people as the department moves forward. Farming stuff out which allows many hands make light work, and it just allows for more collaboration and different thoughts and other people having some skin in the game. So moving forward, and then my other thought is you guys need to figure out whether you want a working chief or just an administrative chief, because during those interviews there was two different trains of thought during those interviews, and that's going to really matter to whoever's going to apply. Because if you don't want to be a working chief, and you guys are looking for a working chief, that you shouldn't apply here. But if you want to be the working chief and that's what you're looking for, you should. So I think that needs to be very clear, because the MRI study says working chief, and that's what we're looking for, and I think that's what we should be looking for. But I think we need to clearly define that that's whatever way you guys as a board decide you want to go.
Yep.
But
That's good advice.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Terry just had her hand up one more time here after she concluded her remarks before we responded. Terry, do you want to have the floor one more time? We're going to move on here shortly.
Peter, thank you. No, I'm sorry if I'm being persistent. But I do have a question actually for the Board of Selectmen, and I wonder if you can answer it for the public tonight. Are you working towards a working chief, or are you working towards an administrative chief? That's one question. Secondly, my last question is, when can we anticipate a full-time fire department, not a volunteer one? We have an issue with the train station here, so I love it if the acting fire crew, 4 members before you tonight, if they could give us, and they're talking about having full-time jobs and the difficulty with being a call department. What would they recommend for the town of Grafton moving forward around having a full-time fire department? And what would the cost be to the taxpayers? And can we work forward around that cost? And what does the projection look like for that?
All right, Terry, I know you've asked a lot there. So
That's okay.
Let's
That's
take,
okay.
We're going to take
That's my
the
job.
last one first here. Some of the board members here want to respond to that. So I know Colleen wanted to go ahead first.
Yeah, Terry, respectfully, those are great questions, but that is not why we are here tonight. And I don't think
I
anybody's
know
prepared
that.
to answer any of those questions tonight. And I think what we're focusing on tonight is moving forward and next steps to get us our next fire chief. And that's all we should be focusing on tonight.
With that, I want to thank you guys. Does anyone else want to respond to Terry?
I forgot what the first question was.
Do we want to work in chief or not? But
There's a consideration I think that Terry had asked about, and I don't know personally, Terry, I don't have an answer for you for myself. I don't know what the rest of the board feels, but I do think that first part of the question was relevant to tonight. Is about whether are we looking for a working chief or that administrative chief? So I at this point I know I want to talk about this a lot further with our board to revisit later on. But if any of the other board members want to take a moment to address it, their concerns or feelings on that, that's fine too.
Well, I know I want a guy who's gonna get his hands dirty. So you're not gonna do that sitting behind a desk. Grafton Fire Department is not of a type of department that requires a full-time chief like Worcester, who has a.
I've asked 4 questions and I've been recognized 4 times, and they don't seriously know what.
Oh,
If
Terry,
I'm
you're not on
fucking-
mute.
Terry,
Oh, well, guess what?
I just put her back onto attendees. Yep.
I thought she was talking to
That's
me.
the beautiful thing about Zoom meetings, everybody. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeehaw.
sorry.
So,
I apologize. So Ray, I'm sorry, you were talking.
But anyway, it just, a working chief is in my opinion, best for the department and to maintain the call department.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I also agree we need a working chief, but I think Paul is correct in saying that we have to review how we interview and what our questions were and just make sure that we're on the same page. And that's, I think, well received from this advice for this board. And so we will be having several more conversations in the future to make sure we're aligned.
If I could just add one thing to correct that, what she said was, we never at any time said that we are wary of our call department. We are very, very fortunate to have the call department that we have, the guys that step up to the plate every day when the tones go off. The study committee made it clear, we have our full-time fire inspector now doing inspections. He reaches out and gets other people involved if he needs the help, and they get paid for it, and that's all been done. Because I said we have full-time jobs, we know who's in town, we know who's available, we know how many, and it works for us. And like Ray said, and when the study committee presented it forward, we said right away, we believe that the town of Grafton needs and shall maintain a good call fire department with a leader, full-time, with the inspector, with the training officer. We just got appointed a deputy, and that's how it works, and it works for us, and it works for the town. And like I said in the beginning, we believe this plan is the best for the department and the town of Grafton.
I believe you. Thank you.
Me too.
Anyone else have any other questions, comments?
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much for coming in tonight. I appreciate it. Continue doing what you're doing. Thank you very much on behalf of the town. I know, we don't say it enough, but we're grateful for all of you and the job that you do. And we're very appreciative. All right, if we want to take a few minute recess and we'll let everyone kind of clear the room, we're going to relocate to upstairs for the remainder part of our meeting for the goals meeting. So we're just going to recess this and we're going to.
All right, so we thought we'd start off by doing just a quick exercise to get everybody kind of thinking. Then we'll review our goals that were already in place, and then we will go to your new goals. And so how we anticipate this works, we'll do a SWOT analysis, which will explain what that is, go over the goals, then you'll each get a different colored marker, and we'll start framing out the goal ideas that you may have and try to parse them down to match into either what's existing or to fit the definition of what we want to have for a goal. All right. So for those of you who have never done a SWOT analysis, it's a pretty straightforward process. We're going to look at strengths and weaknesses of the town in general. It can be macro, it can be micro. Your strengths and weaknesses are internal. So you're going to be thinking about your staff, your infrastructure, all of that. Your opportunities and threats are going to be external. So out there in the environment, what are things that we think is an opportunity out there in the ether, and what do we think is a threat? Economic downturn and housing market bubble, whatever they happen to be. Those are probably two of them. But so we really want to start probably by listing strengths. So what do we think Grafton's strengths are currently?
Community involvement.
Okay.
We're trying to modernize and making sure that we're looking at projections and we're trying to update all of our existing capital as best we can.
Okay.
Public safety.
I'm thinking for Collins also capital planning. Funding?
The town has done a really good job of funding municipal initiatives over the past 6-7 years. Since 14.
I think we have a really strong educational offering here in Grafton as well.
I would say that you have a really good base of staff. You've got a lot of hardworking, dedicated people that really show up for Grafton, especially when it's needed.
There's a strong base of facilities too.
Yeah.
We have a strong senior center community.
Mhm. What else? Anything? I think you've got a good base of capital infrastructure. Your equipment is in good shape. You've got people looking after it, and you replenish it on a fairly regular basis. Yep. Anything else? You can circle back if you think of something else later.
Bond rating, is
Yeah,
that internal?
sure. I think it's probably all actually categories.
Yeah.
You can probably put bond rating in all of them.
Mhm.
All right, anything else? So as you can see, as we list these out, these strengths, when you're thinking about goals, you're gonna start seeing some of these trends pop up in your goal. And it's gonna depend on timeline, resources, all the rest of it. If you've got tons of strength in that area, then it's a shorter timeline and probably an easier lift. Whereas if that's one of your identified weaknesses, we have to take that into account, right? So what do we think our weaknesses are?
Our ratio of economic development.
Mhm.
Residential.
Okay, so commercial v residential,
I think, walkability.
walkability?
Walkability,
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
And just even walking and biking, really. It's
Okay.
difficult to grasp.
And I would say transportation in general.
like public transit?
Public, yeah, there's, except for cars,
Mhm.
there's not, you can't, there's not a lot of public transit options, if any, and also, as Matt is saying, like walking and biking isn't really a safe option in the community, so it's limiting.
I think messaging, sometimes we miss big ones, like when it comes to overrides, we wait until the last possible minute to talk about it.
Okay.
And we can do better on that.
Would you do that as an opportunity or a weakness?
Can it not be both?
It can be both.
Yeah.
I don't know how you think about it.
What else do you think? I think a weakness that Grafton has is also staffing in regards to, we're a moderate, mid-sized community, and we can't keep pace with the large-scale communities, and we're gonna constantly be a farm team. So I would call that staff turnover, just for a shorthand. That's what I mean by that, not that we have people hemorrhaging. I mean.
So
But we also can't compete with larger cities and towns as far as pay scale goes.
Right.
well,
And
that's part of it.
that's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
So Grafton's changed a lot. If we look at our demographics, I think one of our weaknesses is as a default, we don't necessarily go to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Mhm.
And that's something that's really emerged a lot over the past year. And it's not something that I think Grafton has, we're starting to, we're certainly, it hasn't been a focus.
Right.
I think our relationship with the Grafton-Upton Railroad could be improved dramatically.
Okay.
There's opportunity for more ongoing relationship.
I think that's a weakness, Doreen. I think it's also a strength.
Yeah.
I think another weakness you could probably add to that, and one of the assets in this town is relationship with Tufts veterinary. I noticed that's waned quite a bit, and I don't know if that's a result of just the past couple of years, but I know that that is something that, we need to be on top of and bring them into the discussion. So they're a big asset in North Grafton.
Yep.
So I think this is changing. But historically, and since we haven't really seen a long-term financial plan, I think that's a continued weakness for us is we just don't, we haven't really engaged in really using our financial trends to make decisions. Seen a good plan with agreed assumptions where we talked to the planning board about, what our assumptions are for the, the long-term budget expectations. I think, another weakness, we've got a good foundation in capital planning. We don't have a good list of assets. So I think we're going to be subject to a lot of surprises in the future potentially until we get that list.
But the list kind of exists for insurance purposes and stuff like that, but I know what you're trying to say. There's no centralized home for all of it together.
And it's not being tracked.
Right.
So I'm thinking about like generators, might be a good example. And those might be insured. I just don't know.
Right.
So it's just something that we need to work on.
Yes.
I'd say grants. Grants and additional funding outside of the tax levy.
Yeah, that's such a mixed bag, right?
Yeah, but I mean, we talk about it for as long as I can remember. But I do think it is something that is a weakness of this town. Either we don't have the right staffing to qualify for them, or we don't have the personnel to fill them out, to move forward with them. So I do think this is something, granted, we may not get a lot of them, but I think it's something that we need to.
I think part of that is under grants is tracking / information. Because I've been here for 7 months, we've got $500,000. So we are getting the grants. We're just not, we're not putting it out. And then there are certain segments of what we do that exactly what you're talking about is what's happening. We haven't done the reporting. We don't have the staff. We didn't know they were available.
Yeah.
We have too much money. We don't have enough money. We have, there's all of those things that come into it. But part of it is making sure people are aware that we do get money,
Like messaging.
like message.
And actually tracking the money. So what happened up on George Hill Road with the design, money that was earmarked.
Yeah.
Did we have it? Did we not have it? That it came not as a surprise, but, we sort of didn't know where that was.
Right.
Same thing with the sidewalk grant money.
Yep.
That was another one that just kind of, we got it, but it can take years for that money to actually come through, and then they notify Grafton, but that should have been part of some type of tracking mechanism. We really don't have that. So a lot of it's just, we are getting a ton of money. It's just real ad hoc, and it needs to be just more systemic in the way that we manage those things so that we know, like the MOD grant is something that comes up every single year, and we should have a sort of a plan for what our priorities are for those things. What ends up happening often is we get to the last minute and somebody puts something in and it's hit or miss. So sometimes it comes through, sometimes it doesn't. It'd be good to be a little bit more deliberate about how we approach grants, tracking them, knowing who's responsible for, the submission deadlines, what the criteria are, all that kind of stuff. It's just not quite there yet.
Okay. What else?
I would say our bylaws. Our bylaws are so antiquated and outdated. I mean, we're uncovering things almost on an ad hoc kind of meeting by meeting basis sometimes. And I think we really need to take a concerted effort to really review them to see just, are they in line with modern practices?
We're due for that, right? Like committees do.
Every 5 years, it's in the charter that calls for this, or it's in the bylaw, but no one ever wants to serve.
Oh, sign me up. Nobody wants me on that committee, but let's go.
So maybe we could roll that together into bylaws, policy, procedure, because we have a lot of that stuff that's kind of slowed. Whether they're your policies or the town's policies or whatever, we've recognized that.
And just to dovetail off that, and making them more user-friendly and intuitive. People shouldn't have to open up like a 100-page document just to find the one that they want. If there was a way to search them and find them easier for residents, that would be better. Again, modernizing that a little bit.
Calling to the government. Like that's an accident.
So I think our permitting is an area of weakness.
Yes.
How so?
I just hear it all the time, that residents and businesses that are going for permits, it's an awkward, kind of time consuming, not intuitive process for getting permits in Grafton.
I hear the same thing. It seems more complicated to residents than it should be. And I don't know if we've, I guess this is, an opportunity to communicate the process.
Okay.
Better to residents.
Yeah, and I think it's a continuation of work that we've been doing already. We have online, permitting software now, which we've started to build forms and workflows and make, modernize. We have to continue that work and leverage that technology capability out. So, we've taken little baby steps, but I don't think we've really fully embraced that and looked at all the opportunities for simplifying the process.
But the standard homeowner doesn't know when they need a permit.
Yep.
And then when they do need a permit, they come here. And I'll be honest with you, they don't get a lot of help.
But I agree with you, and that's what I'm talking
And
about.
I know contractors, residential contractors, who will renovate a bathroom or whatever in a house and not get a permit because they don't want to go through the hassle.
Customer service would be another weakness. I know we talked about that last year.
So we lose a lot of money in permit, I say a lot of money, but there's a lot of work that goes on in residential houses that is not permitted, that's not inspected, that the homeowners are taking a chance. When something does happen on the insurance side, it could affect your mortgage, it could affect all kinds of things. So, I've gotten permits all over the country. There's places that you walk in and they run you through the process. You go through the process. Here's what you have to do. You have to do this, do this, do this, do this. You bring all of that back and you get a permit. And I know that sounds like that happens here, but I get calls, well, not calls, but I talk to people all the time that say, I don't even want to do it. I'll just do it without a permit.
So I'm wondering, like, in customer service, is it just a devotion towards, better serving the public? Because I know we've talked, I mean, not we, but this conversation is not something new in Grafton, Ray, you know this. And anyone else who's ever filled out a permit before, but I'm curious as to if there could, getting into the minutiae here a little bit, but look at that and changing from customer service and look at it as just general public service. I mean, people in town should be going out of their way, helping the public get through the paperwork. And when I hear the opposite of that, it gets very discouraging. I'm just saying, if it's more or less public service or customer service.
Usually in government, you call that stewardship,
Okay.
right? That's kind of the buzzword that we would use for that premise, right? Well, general public service, ownership of a process, that type of thing. All right, what else for weaknesses? That's a super bummer. Let's move on.
I didn't think it was gonna be that many.
Yeah, they're that's easier than
Yeah.
strengths, quite
Yeah.
honestly. It almost always, which again should inform some of your discussion about what your goals are going to be. All right, so what do we see as opportunities?
Well, and a lot of our weaknesses, some of our weaknesses too are smaller, like not having listed assets. That's different than our bond rating, which has so much related to it.
I think we have great opportunities in economic development. And we need to jump on that bandwagon before it goes by us. Just think that we need to be a lot more aggressive with what we have. And whether it's putting together, a team to go visit companies or to do something or whatever it is, we need to promote economic development a lot more. And that will be a benefit to this town. We don't have that much land and we don't have that much opportunity, and we're gonna someday run out of that opportunity.
but we need to get a foundation going, to get it in. So would a threat that came out of that same sentence be limited space? Yes, absolutely.
Correct, that makes sense.
So we're just gonna skip around now?
No, that we're staying here, but I don't want to make it
before until. You know, Ray actually brought up a really good point there, so I agree that there is a limited amount of space in that is the threat that would affect any of these opportunities. That would come up. So, I think another opportunity we have is, we're getting newer, modern, information management systems, not like IT, but programs and applications.
Yeah.
So I would say some of our opportunities are in our modern permitting application. We're putting in new accounting, general ledger treasury applications.
Yeah.
These things I think would assist us with getting reporting that we weren't really getting before. Some of us on prior committees, it was very challenging to just get a list of, well, what capital projects did we do over the past 3 years? Well, go back and look at the CIPC. It's like, well, that wasn't really what we were asking, but someplace to your point where they were looking at, some of those weaknesses.
No, that's absolutely right. And, you can take your assumptions and build those into your projections that go right into the GL software to, again, so that you're not having to work in a spreadsheet. You're using actual software to put in your assumptions, and you can change those as they get updated. And you can have projections that, projections are only ever good at 2-3 years out ever, but to the extent possible, when those assumptions are wrong and need to be updated, you just update them in the software, it automatically changes the projections. And that's the sort of approach that we need to take with all of this stuff. Same thing at capital. You can just chuck it all in there now and it'll build the list for you.
I just want to say too, I think we're doing a better job every year around capital, around that planning. I think that it really deserves, something modern like this. I know we've got ClearGov as part of the summer you've done the training on that, right? But these are great starts. But I think these are great opportunities for us to really tell the story. I think it goes back to one of the weaknesses is messaging. Right. I think you need these information systems to help with the messaging and tell the story.
So we have a number of plans that we are working on or have been completed where I think we have some big opportunities for the town to support. So we have our new open space and rec plan. We have the comprehensive plan being built. Yep, the self-study for ADA compliance, that's on the town side. The schools are going for funding on the school side. So those are all plans that we should, we've either paid for or got grants for that we should be supporting as a town and making sure that they're not just shelfware. Because they all contain a lot of really valuable information. The housing production plan is another one. So there's a lot of information out there, but it requires kind of leadership and champions and people to be accountable for taking the actions that are outlined in those plans and carrying them forward. So
and keeping it a live document, the whole process.
yeah, comprehensive plan is probably the best example of that. The one that we're replacing was from 2001, I think. So hopelessly updated at this point.
In most communities now are updating either their comprehensive plan and their strategic plan. It used to be 20 years and now it's down to 10 years.
Yep.
And so they start planning it every 5 to 8 years, where ours is 20 years old. So that's definitely an opportunity. I would also say, I feel like we've made great strides in affordable housing, but there's more opportunity, and this kind of goes back to the diversity of weakness too. Is I feel like we can do better as a community as Grafton gets more and more expensive to put programs in place, more programs in place for our vulnerable community, whether it be seniors or people who need affordable housing or any kind of tax programs. I know we have some in place, but I feel like we can do more.
Yep, housing subsidies, rental assistance.
Yep.
There's
Yep.
a lot that can be done.
Yep.
For sure. So Will, can you just put down sort of support for
the ADA compliance, self-eval, open space plan, comprehensive plan.
And all the existing plans.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, all existing plans.
We're sort of, we're redoing a lot of that right now. It all seems to be kind of coming at the same time.
I know I'm gonna kick myself for saying this, but because we lack an updated master plan, should that be a weakness that we should identify?
We're finding one.
It's
in the works.
funded,
It's coming.
so, yeah, I think.
I don't
that's in
think
the
nothing
works.
even really exists, so I'm just saying, it doesn't exist yet.
That's on last year's.
It is.
Yep.
But I kind of look at it, as it's not.
Well, only a third of it though.
Yeah, only, yeah, it's a 3-year funding.
So I also have to just say, and I say this every year, there's, because I work in it and I see the opportunity for better sustainability on city and town levels. And the Commonwealth is really supporting communities to go zero carbon footprint by 2030. There's a lot of eastern cities and towns that have already jumped on board and are doing this. And so not only reducing risks and vulnerabilities within the community environmentally, but the plus side of it is it also lowers costs. You know, all of these newer, and this kind of goes back to the grants too, you know, because it's all interconnected. It's like if you apply for these grants, the state will pay to upgrade different energy services and different impacts, which will then lower the cost of the energy bills in the town, both for residents and for the municipality, which is going to impact our budget. And we don't have a person in place to do that. And many communities don't, you know, it's the, again, like the Lexingtons and the Arlingtons and the Cambridge that are hiring sustainability directors who are doing this. And they're able to cut costs. So I think it's something that we, as a municipality, can do better on that. I know we do green communities, we do the MVP program, which is great, and that's like maybe 10% of opportunity that's out there now, so.
So I feel like that's a general opportunity, is just again chasing grants
Yes,
across
Yeah.
the board.
or just being aware of, you know, I don't know if anyone, perhaps you are, or you are, but you know, like, the MMA conference is coming up, the annual conference is coming up in January, and I was looking at that, and most of it's on climate change, opportunities for cities and towns. I mean, it's not on our radar as much as like where I see it everywhere else. And again, I work in it, so it's probably one reason why, but
Well, that's definitely gonna be a threat for us, for sure.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That
So,
MS4 plan just escalates year after year.
yeah, and Ray, I mean, you probably know this more than anybody in the room. It's like this also dovetails into hazard mitigation, right? Emergency management. And so like what are our plans? Like those should correlate together. And like, you know, what happens if there's a disaster, a climate disaster in town? What if roads are shut down? Like what's the plan? Back to messaging. What's the plan? I don't know if anybody knows that. I don't. So it's all interconnected.
Okay.
So if we're talking on the threat side, I think just housing affordability is definitely a threat for sure.
So I think a major threat that's coming up, that's gonna hit us very soon. I know this may sound kind of funny, but school department buildings and town facilities. Even though we appear to have a lot of new buildings, we still have a lot of old buildings. And the schools are, you know, the high school's nice, but the other schools are, yeah. The other schools, Grafton Elementary, South Grafton Elementary, North Street, Millbury Street, they're in rough shape. And this is going to be a major threat to the town because it's millions and millions and millions of dollars.
You know, we have a brand new, not brand new, but it's 10 years old, the Center Fire Station. But we have a fire station in North Grafton that was built in 1958. And if you walk in it, it's 1958. South Grafton was built in the 70s. If you walk in it, it's the 70s.
Right.
All of these things are gonna have to be renovated, built up, and it's huge, huge money. I have no idea where we're gonna get it. Really, really. I mean, you know, I played basketball in North Grafton Elementary School. You know, I don't know. I'm not sure why some of the stuff hasn't been taken care of over the years. But the other thing that is a threat is that because of the facilities that we have, and I'll tell you, I brought this up 25 years ago to split a director of facilities with the school department and the town. And it fell on deaf ears then. And I know the school department has a director of facilities, but I'm talking about somebody who is over all of the buildings and does a report on every single building that we have and puts together proposals and estimates and brings them to town meeting and says, okay, we're gonna fix the North Grafton Elementary School this year. And in 2 years, we're gonna fix the South Grafton Elementary or whatever it is. And it's gonna cost this. And we have to do it. So,
You know, Ray, do you remember, was it 2010, 2011? We had a huge capital summit. We talked about all of the buildings that needed to be replaced.
yeah,
Okay, but what we never talked about was how much is it gonna cost to upkeep the existing buildings? That was never part of the calculus. It was just, what are the net new capital costs that we need to go out and borrow? A large sum of money, what's gonna fall off, and so on and so forth. I agree, like, knowing South Grafton Elementary, North Grafton Elementary, those are really the two oldest school buildings we have. North Street Elementary, followed by them. Miller Street High School and those things.
Yeah.
Are relatively the newest out of the 6 buildings. But to your point, you know, just having, I think we kind of touched upon it in the weakness is. Oh, we didn't talk about it. We talked, oh yeah, briefly, no long-term financial plan and no list of assets.
right.
We're not looking at those assets.
Right.
Like to your point, and I know we talked about this goes back, oh my God, 15, 20 years. We talked about a director of buildings
Yes.
for the town.
Yeah.
If you add up, I think we need to do that. I really think that that's something that's a threat, is if we need to add up all of the assets of the buildings that we have and look at how much are we budgeting for someone to oversee those buildings, I think we're gonna be like disturbed. Just my anecdotal analysis.
I mean, I know it's municipalities and they don't usually do this, and you know, some towns do it, some I know cities do it. But if this was a business, and our business owned this much real estate, we would have a probably VP of maintenance and construction, and then PMs that go down the line to make sure all of this stuff gets done. Now, do we need that hierarchy? No. I think we need one person who can put together all of this stuff and come up with plans. My concern is very near future, we're going to be spending $15 or $20 million to renovate one of these buildings. And I'm probably on the low side of 15 to 20 million dollars. It's probably 30 to 40 million dollars. We're going to be back out to debt exclusion, and we're going to get one building done. So,
Well, I think this is another opportunity too, which is, you know, we're talking about school buildings, but and positions, but this is something I think when we spoke about it again, like 10 or 15 years ago, whenever it was, but like shared services with the school department, and you know, something like that, like a building director or facilities director or something, you know, if it was shared services and they worked for the school department and the town, you know, it's we're seeing the full picture, I guess is what I'm saying. So and there may be more opportunities like that as well.
I'd agree with that. So, you know, one of our weaknesses
with, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion. We have the potential, you know, the schools have a director of D&I,
Right.
right? So could we benefit from some of the collateral material that they have, some of the best practices? Could they produce training for staff? So that's something, you know, we've been able to use BBT to do some security training. That's great. We've used like the Mass Office of Disability to do some disability training. Like, could we get some D&I training in, you know, from the school side?
Yeah.
So I think we should absolutely be taking those opportunities.
Yeah, yeah.
HR is another area where, you know, they're a little heavier because they've got more staff.
Of course.
Could be partnered with them.
Another threat is, I'm gonna say Grafton Upton Railroad again.
And I'm gonna, I know I have strengths, public safety down in strengths, but public safety is also a threat. You know, the possibility, and I say possibility, of having a full-time fire department at some point is real. It is absolutely is real. The other thing is that we have a great deal on our ambulance. We pay nothing for paramedic level service 24 hours a day with all kinds of backups. If we ever lose that, that is a major big threat. So I just like to put it on there because it's, you know, things may not go on forever the way they are. We may not have a call department for the next, you know, 30, 40 years. That would be great. But
We just have public safety budget though, so it's not, like,
Yeah,
it's not, no lack of confidence.
Yeah, right. No,
Yeah.
I don't mean that. I just mean at some point, there will be full-time firefighters in this town.
Well, yeah, and I want to pigtail it, because you and I discussed this at, you know, when we were on the fire safety committee, is that is staffing. We're getting less and less people who want to be a call firefighter. I think that has nothing to do with the call department we have today, but that is a threat to every community, actually to the country, is people who want to work in first responder jobs.
Yeah.
I don't think staffing limited to the fire department, but I think staffing is a threat all over Grafton because we have positions like a grant writer or a director of facilities that we just don't have these people in these positions that we know we need because we don't have the budget for them. So what other positions can we identify as a need and how do we fund them so that we get some of our wants?
Can we change it on top of that, Colleen? But would you agree that staffing turnover pay scale compared to which says we should add another slash in there that says just staffing?
Can we hit enter and put human capital?
There you go. What was that?
Sorry, I didn't want the owl.
So I think also under threats is cost of health insurance and OPEB. We can put both of those together. I mean, that is just a moving target and huge expense to the town. It affects our budget immensely.
Yeah, so, yeah, just the general economic downturns, obviously, are always a threat. Just because of this, you know, drop in state funding that comes to us as a result.
State, federal.
Yep. So, and I would dovetail state and federal aid as your opportunity for grants is also a threat. Because as we saw with, 2016, every federal grant dried up. And even if they were funded, there was nobody there to do the actual work. So like your AFG grants, just stopping, we were, where I was, we were midstream on a grant and then there's nobody to talk to. So all of that money that you had now budgeted, we're getting 30% of it in the grant, you budget 30% less at town meeting, now you can't afford your project. But I think that makes sense. All right, anything else?
Yeah, that's good. I'll be up all night now.
Goals meetings feels like it now.
And so one of the things we'll do as we refine this a little bit. One of the things that will happen as we refine this a little bit is some of this gets shifted here and some of this gets shifted there, because what you're actually identifying as a threat is a weakness because it's internal to us. and not external in the environment. These two categories are things that we don't necessarily have any control over, right? Or limited control. And so we might shift some of those around as we work towards a final document. But all in all, I think that's a pretty good exercise to inform where we have weaknesses and or threats, right? Okay. Everybody good with that part?
Yeah.
Do we want to, I budgeted 30 minutes, for 3 minutes over. Does anybody want to take a break? We want to move into reviewing what we did, or what you did.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Okay.
You guys can continue talking.
Take a 2-minute break.
Sure.
You guys can continue. I didn't bring cigarettes, so. This time.
So we broke it up into your completed goals and your not completed goals. Your completed goals: hire me, hire William, hire Mary. Those are obviously complete. We updated your financial management policies already. CIPC phase 1 and 5-year plan are completed with the caveat that we're moving to ClearGov, and there's going to be some work that needs to be done there as we transition. So it kind of changes that goal a little bit. And then 8 Pine Street, which we actually was done a full fiscal year earlier than you had identified in your plan.
I like that hiring the TA is 115% complete and hiring William is only 78%.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress.
Makes sense.
Not a full
Yeah.
person.
Not yet. We're getting there.
All right, so then,
Every day.
a little bit every day. Your ongoing goals: hire a grant procurement officer. We rated that at 50% because we've melded that into William's goals. He's been fully trained and certified as a procurement officer.
Trying to find out.
I think that gets you up to 88% now.
Improvement in customer service culture. We also rated that at 50%, totally an arbitrary number. I think some people will say we've done more, some people would say we've done less. We are doing it pretty consistently with our, especially this building, our staff meetings, there's always a customer service component. And I think we do some pretty strong customer service work. We don't.
We just discussed that was an impossible thing to measure.
Yeah, that's why we picked 50%, because we know we've been working on it, but we don't know when you're done.
Yeah.
So we just put it on there. Former operating procedures, we started that to a certain degree, got to pick that back up. Taxation Aid Committee, so that was supposed to go on town meeting in the spring. It did not get put on there, kind of fell off the radar, so we're gonna put it on for the next spring. Or next available town meeting, whatever that happens to be. Green Communities Implementation. We did receive a, what was it, $245,000 grant this year?
Off the top of my head, I do not have the number, but that sounds right.
I believe it was $245,000. We did hybrid cars, we've done. We'll have to, give you that list again, messaging, right?
Yeah.
So we did receive that, and your goal, your plan specified getting a grant in 22, 23, and 24. So we figured we're a third down, we got the grant from your well. Your MVP process, we have done the MVP work and applied for our first grant. We're just awaiting an award. We didn't get the award yet, right? William's been working on that with Leah and Chris McGoldrick. Master plan, you've funded your first third of it. Now we need to procure the consultant, which will be coming up probably over the winter months. Identify and improve your economic position. So you've taken some steps to do that, but it's really hard to figure out how to measure that. In 27 Upton, we rated at half complete. You will be seeing a purchase and sale this week for potential approval on the 16th.
17 and 27.
No, I'm just putting 27.
Okay.
That's how it's in your plan.
That's a quick question, Alex.
What?
So identify
Sorry, yes.
improved economic position. We're
Yes,
not talking about John Allen, we're talking about the position.
that
of the
was
town.
part of your goal.
Is
The
it
way
a
we
position?
looked at it was getting someone to do the work.
Okay, I just needed my memory refreshed. Okay,
Am I missing that?
Part-time.
yes, if we have a part-time person and we're talking about expanding that, I think.
You have it on your computer?
And like even the funding for it, because it's just always jumping in and out of where it should be funded and
Right.
what is it? What are we doing?
Yes, what are we
Is it valuable? Is it not valuable? How valuable? Where are we going with it?
Yeah. So Will's gonna pull up your goal to see exactly, we were stronger on that yesterday. Yep. World's smallest spreadsheet.
I think it maybe it's the town's position.
I think I rewrote that, didn't there? There's definitely a better version somewhere.
I don't know, Carl, you sent so many different documents.
If a better one exists, I don't have, so.
Well, that's gonna change in about 20 seconds.
Identify paper, this is how we got there, digital application permitting guide.
Yeah.
So that's, the program is supposed to be intuitive, it's not turning out to be that intuitive, so that's still there, but identify paperwork reducer. I think we've done that in a lot of areas, we've got the ClearGov, you've got your streamlined permitting, we're bringing on the planning board into that electronic permitting. Right?
Yeah.
So we're moving in that direction, so. But not done. That's how we got the 15%. Will and my arbitrary,
It's a very in-depth conversation.
it was. We'll just spend all this time talking about the way everybody ran out. 25 Worcester Street. Again, we have no idea. It's kind of hard to gauge.
Yeah.
How you would,
That's outside of our control.
Right.
We don't even own the property.
right, so,
We can support it though.
I'm not saying we're not, but I'm just saying like, we have no control over the outcome of that goal.
right, so, and again, you're going over these, some of these you might drop, or you might change the way that you're measuring them, determining that they're completed, who's implementing them, you know, you might change some of that. Sidewalk program?
As we defined it last year, I mean, those weren't smart goals.
Right, absolutely. MS4, risk and goals, you've done a lot of work with MS4 on consulting. I know Paul Canoyer's done a ton of work, it is pretty much endless. And then develop.
Do we skip Skywalk?
Yeah.
Sidewalk is at 2%.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna do it forever. I don't know when I mean, it's gonna take a long time, but you've done, Melbury Street?
Main Street, I think.
Milford Road.
Milford. We're doing backwards all the time.
I know.
Milford Road. Well, I can't get anywhere. So Milford Road you've done, but,
Complete Streets might help with that.
right, absolutely. I think it will 100%. And then develop building and maintenance plan, which is what Ray was talking about.
Just remind me again what MS stands for, MS4.
I have no idea. MS4 is stormwater.
No, I got the first two, it's municipal stormwater, then I lose.
Okay.
All right, as long as that's what it means. I knew it had something to do with stormwater. I just want to make sure what MS stood for. That's all. We didn't miss it.
Yeah, I actually don't know
Everybody does.
what the, you know, with the-
Acronym.
It's just a goal of ours.
Acronym concept.
it's a federal standard, so no, they don't even know what they're supposed to be doing.
Great.
So that pretty much wraps up what you've got going on currently. What are you looking for?
The MS4 definition.
You don't have, it's okay. It's.
Municipal separate stormwater, storm sewer system.
So that's why it's MS4, because it's separate storm sewer system.
It was the dash that threw me
It's
off.
the 4 S's.
I gotta get rid of the dash.
That's it.
Can't believe you did that.
You better get off your ass.
Just dropped from 115% to
I know.
114%.
I know. We'll just went up to 79%. All right, any questions on that, or do we want to move to talk about some new stuff and or carry over?
Did you want us to like evaluate this now to see what do we want to keep going on, or what do we want to talk about moving off, or do you want to hold off?
So we can do it one of two ways, I was thinking. We can either talk about briefly what a SMART goal is.
Okay.
And what we want to both refine these goals into and capture your new goals with that format in mind. Or we can just talk about these. What's everybody's pleasure? Let's do SMART goals.
Let's do it.
So I had it in my brain.
That's a smart one.
This way, see, it flows around. So SMART goals. What you're looking to build is a goal that is specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-sensitive. So you're gonna take in your specificity, you gotta have the who, right? What do you want to do and who's gonna do it? How are you gonna actually measure whether or not you've completed your goal? Action oriented is really just, it has to do something, right? Realistic, do you have the human capital to get it done? Is it something that the town of Grafton can even achieve? And time sensitive, what's the urgency of it? Right, you don't wanna put a goal on here that you're not even start for 10 years, because it's just out there in ether. These are goals we wanna be moving on and working towards.
And something that can actually be completed.
Right.
So sidewalks is a good example of will never be done, but not necessarily, so, you know, how do we define a goal which is time bound? Right, to say we wanna actually do these or, you know, focus on a certain area. of time.
Right, so to make that into a SMART goal, you would need to talk about where you wanna do the sidewalks, how much you think you can get done, and where you wanna be at the end of each fiscal year as far as completion of sidewalk.
So would it be fair to say for that one, we want to increase net new 5%?
So it would be my recommendation to the board that you take that sidewalk program goal and go to Paul Canoyer and say, we need to make this into a SMART goal. How do we make that? What's realistic?
Yeah.
What can we actually do? Because he's the one that has the qualification to do that. I would love to see 5%. Is 5% reasonable? Should we be doing it by mile? Should we be doing it by need? I mean, those are questions that when we push this stuff back to the staff, they're gonna help refine.
And what policies are in place for new neighborhoods being built that already have sidewalks? How are we putting that into the percentage?
Right,
You
do
know?
they count towards the percentage?
Exactly.
Is this sidewalk program for existing streets without sidewalks? Is it repair and maintenance of existing sidewalks? You know, there's a lot of different questions, I think, that,
Can we ask prioritization be around schools?
Yes.
right,
Yeah, which is what
that
we
would
brought
make it
up
more
last year.
specific,
Yeah.
right? You would say sidewalk program for walkability of schools. or
It is, but we have some other areas that are now emerging. So if we think about 25 Worcester Street, the Gateway development happening up on Upton
Right,
Street.
right.
We have this opportunity to make a walkable village-like feel for a fairly large population that are going to be in rental units. To really support all those businesses in town and churches and the
Yeah,
library.
yeah.
You know, that trail behind the library
Yeah.
that's going in and all of that. So that's another area that's kind of emerging that I would see us trying to support with walking and biking and other infrastructure like that.
And we have all the work going on in South Grafton now that's going to help develop that whole school area and make it more village-like and, you know, so.
I can tell you
Those
on
are-
Elmwood, which is within walking distance
Yeah.
of South Grafton, the sidewalk abruptly stops right at my neighbor's house for no reason. And there's a ton of kids.
And that happens all the time.
Yeah, and
All
I
of a
don't
sudden
know,
it stops. It's
it just,
North
it
Grafton
would
Post
make
Office.
sense
Yeah,
to complete
yeah.
it. And it seems like a low hanging fruit, easy one.
Sure.
That's
Yeah.
how Milford Road was tagged to do that one, and
Yep.
that one seems like just do that.
And then the study in North Grafton to redo,
Yeah, the
or not
LRT.
redo, but there's sidewalks down there, but there's very few,
Right,
very few sidewalks.
absolutely.
So I guess that's the question that the board needs to set, like, it's high priority areas, and that's what we go to staff and say, okay, how realistic is this and how do we measure it? What's a reasonable measurement to attain what percentage? Is that how you're
Well,
looking?
that, you might even take one step farther back. You might go to Paul Canoyer and say, the board needs feedback on where's the low hanging fruit? What are the ones, where should we be focusing? I mean, because he has the asphalt management plan too, so you're gonna wanna dovetail with those two things.
Yeah.
So you don't wanna put in a brand new sidewalk and then pave the road in 3 years, you wanna do it all in one shot. You're gonna get a lot of economic savings there. So I think some of these, and some of your ongoing stuff, you might wanna kind of hit pause on and kick back out to the next phase where we do our roundtable with department heads and say, these are ongoing goals, how do we close them out? How do we get there? What does that look like?
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about new goals? Okay. Do you guys want to write on the board? Do you want William to type it on the board?
William, you do a great job describing it.
Okay.
Professionally trained.
You gotta believe.
So is it different color markers? Is that where?
Slow down.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, no problem.
Making sure we're.
Yeah, yeah, pump the
Oh, you're
brakes.
gonna type them? Okay.
It's whatever the thought of you would like.
That's great.
We do have different colored markers if you'd like to be a little graphic.
All right,
I
let's,
passed all there. Okay.
let's take them out.
Yeah, yeah.
Who's gonna go?
I have,
Okay,
like the board, to think about considering inclusion diversity committee for the purposes of addressing one of the key area weaknesses that we identified or we considered identified. The objective of this goal would be to have this group assist the town in creating inclusion and diversity descriptions to attract more people with different orientations and, you know, basically capture more of the culture that the town is representing. So this is like for committees, job descriptions, you know, someone to help assist with writing more attractive descriptions of what we want.
So would you envision this committee being something that Evan would have to go to before he puts up a job description, or we would have to go to before we craft a charge, or, you know, how are you envisioning their recommendations being?
I like it similar to the way the Disability Commission works today, where they look and evaluate ways to have the town become more accessible in that situation. So without getting to deliberating but yeah, that's a great question. I would see it kind of functioning in a similar manner.
So one of the things that makes Disability Commission successful is the fact that we funded a sub-study, and they have kind of a guiding document to go by. One way that we could go with this goal is to fund an audit and have that be the kind of the plan, rather than having a committee it's kind of a little bit boundless, I guess, to put some structure around what they should be focusing on. That helps, and continues to help, I think, disability, because they've got a funded plan which shows, hey, here's all the things that we found, here's short-term, medium-term, long-term, and approximate funding for different things. There's a lot to do in, you know, in this area. Some of it is real low-hanging fruit. Like just putting together a calendar of important holidays and sharing that out to boards and committees to say, hey, here's the dates you want to avoid having meetings on because there are important holidays, right?
Right.
Really interesting at town meeting that it was sort of one of the main reasons I think the Saturday meeting got shut down was because of the Jewish religion. And I thought that was really interesting. It was something that just didn't register with me. But then somebody said it and I was like, oh yeah, okay,
Right.
I'm a no.
Right.
Is there,
So some simple things like that, I think we should consider an audit to just provide that baseline foundation of action.
I liked it. Because I think, you know, there's so much crossover. I mean, even in economic development, you know, when we talk about what kind of economic development we want to bring into town, it's like thinking in terms of diversity and inclusion, we maybe end up targeting different things that weren't on our radar, right, before in Grafton. So, you know, for example, I mean, if you go into Shrewsbury and there's all these awesome Indian supermarkets and restaurants and stuff because they have a large Indian population, and so does Grafton. You know what I mean? So there's there's definitely opportunity there, and I like that because I feel like there needs to be some sort of structure in order for a complete picture to be really well received, and you know, and things that need to be either brought to town meeting or economic development or whatever. Wherever there are barriers, it seems like with the Disabilities Commission, the agenda items that they jump on, they have a reference point. And I think that's important, especially for a new committee like that. So I would support that.
is there enough for to support a new committee, or is that something we should ask disability, who's already working on inclusion for one population, to consider expanding disability to include diversity? Good question.
I think they're two distinct different missions.
Yeah, I see those as two very different things. Disability would almost be a subset of the overall DE&I
Yeah.
initiative.
Yeah.
It's an important population, but it's also super technical.
Yeah.
Because of all of the regulations that are involved. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, though.
Could ask.
Yeah.
I think we need to do a salary study. Because I believe that we're falling behind in that, just in the last few months, recruitment process is very active, very active. And if you have a town that pays more money or a city that pays more money, if it's the same job, people are gonna move. Right. And I think we really need to do a salary study so that we are falling behind right now. And we should pick it up and stay up with the times so that we can attract good quality people to the town, and understand that a lot of people don't like that, oh geez, this person's making that much, this person's making that much. But it's what's produced out of it.
Right.
So that's the important part.
Yeah, so our salary study is done in December.
That's a common class thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a grant, first week I was here,
Yeah.
Something like that.
and then I got an extra 10 grand from FinCom, so we're almost done with it. They're working on our job descriptions right now, so by December, we'll have that full comp and class ready to implement, if we can afford it.
Based on comps
From 12 surrounding communities that are of equal size and economics, and then it's probably more like 8 that are equal and 4 that we picked because that's where our people normally go.
that are over and above.
Right. Yeah, like Shrewsbury, right?
Yes.
We're not really similarly sized, but that's where our people go.
Right.
So we want to skew our data in that direction.
I want to maintain focus on reviewing our policies and getting them online.
You mean online, like on the internet?
On the internet, yep.
You could take it 2 ways. Put that one online. Right. Well, we brought them online and they're in place.
I think to Colleen's point earlier, I would reiterate it. Easy to use, searchable. Because constantly I'm searching for a bylaw or something. It's Colleen knows what.
As much as I am asking for that, I'm very used to the system in place, and I will probably be the most annoyed when it gets updated, because I know where to find everything now, but it's annoying to find it. It shouldn't be that hard.
Okay. So let's get more specific on that. Easy to use and searchable. So how do you, what does the board think searchable looks like? Is it a database? Is it a PDF that every different subset of the document is hyperlinked to? What is that?
We talked earlier about a shared drive that we don't have.
Right. Well, I think Colleen's talking, this tool is.
This is for the public.
for the
Yeah.
public.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to define it as, I wanna go in and I need to look at our zoning bylaws. I want to say residential setback.
Yeah.
I wanna find, yes. Okay, I'm touching on permitting and all that, right? Something as simple as that.
Okay.
And I'm gonna say it's that simple. It might be easy for people who already know where that information is. But from the rest of the world, when we're looking for information, we don't know where it is. We have a specific idea of how we're going to start looking for that, research and gathering that data. It's our website, because of the tech and old, just is very limiting in allowing us to do that.
If you can add filters on the existing search bar, that would be good. Because if you wrote residential setback, you might get minutes and agendas and things
Yeah,
like,
right.
I don't want any of that garbage. So you unclick that, and then it's just, or click what you want to appear, and then it'll help with that process.
So can we also add accessible to that? Our website's not particularly accessible.
All for different languages.
Just for people with disabilities.
Right.
If you try to browse
Supposed to
through,
hover over and supposed to
Yeah.
tell you what the picture is and all that,
Yeah.
and we don't do that. So let me ask, for my own edification, website accessibility and policies, procedures, getting them online, all of that. Do we foresee building a new website for that?
it feels to me like a funded revamp of our website.
Look outside of what we have today.
So that's something that I've been sort of,
That's why I wanted to make sure it wasn't, like, we're just not adding a find it fast button. We're talking about kind of an overhaul.
no, I think this is a modernizing of the website. Other towns around us have done it and have some pretty good success. Just making it more intuitive, more searchable, more accessible.
Understood.
But it's not something we could do. I was gonna think.
Very happy about that. I've been talking to a couple of companies already about the potential for rebuilding the website and how we can make it better.
Awesome.
So that's something that we can definitely get some traction on quickly, I think.
And I think this kind of falls into what I said earlier about information management information systems, not the, like, tech and all that sort of thing, but this is the application layer in which we look for this information. Much to what Ray was saying, like an area where, hey, I want to look up contracts. That should be publicly accessible information. I know the town 15 years ago set out an initiative to do that. It just didn't go anywhere. But I do believe that that's I know we talked about open checkbook. Remember, that was one of the objectives, I think when you were discussing with you early on. And yeah, I want to see us have the ability to get to that level of attainment.
So then do you need a goal? And again, we're outlining stuff, so we can make them smart later. We can refine and refine and refine. But do you want a transparency goal? Because that's that's essentially, you could capture a lot of things under transparency. You want to see.
I think there's transparency today. When someone asks for something, they get it.
Right.
But I think that there's a self-service component of it that I think the public should be entitled to. And, I think it's important that they reach out to the community to make sure they're getting a codified version of whatever it is. But at the same time, I want to look at contracts that the town has signed over the past year.
Right. Yes.
So as a part of that, I think we've got a big opportunity for delegating content management out to some department heads and or commission heads. For example, I know like the Grafton Land Trust has kind of just its own thing. And they maintain it themselves, but a big part of that is because they approach the town and the town put all of these restrictions around it. There's licensing costs involved.
Yeah.
Obviously management issues potentially and all that kind of stuff. But I think we've got an opportunity, if we're sort of redoing things, to think about a more federated approach to content management so that we're not relying on William to have everybody emailing him with, hey, this link doesn't work. Can you update it? Or, whatever, this language doesn't appear correct anymore.
Where do I find this?
Yeah, where do I find that kind of stuff? So that we have a more distributed way of managing some of the content.
Yep. I think that probably can be a discussion that falls under website modernization, because I think that part of the reason why it goes to William is that the functionality of the website is so difficult to manage.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't necessarily want to lose some of that control because other people don't know what they're doing. Whereby if we went to a new modern system that's more drag and drop, click and intuitive, more people can grasp that concept and actually do their own updating.
Absolutely.
Yep. I don't even do it. I consistently screw it up. I just stopped. I just asked what to do it. You went on Munson's website for 6 months. We were missing 3 buttons. I couldn't get them to come back. I had to pay money to get them. It was a whole thing.
You just want to pick 1%.
Nope.
The chairman shut it on 81 now.
Well,
So
I'll
what-
find demerits tomorrow. Don't you worry.
Looking at realistically, how many goals should we be looking at right now? Is this an endless list we want to keep going at, or?
Yeah, I think you throw stuff on the wall and then we're gonna go to the department heads and say, look what these people think we can do.
And they're gonna come back and
No,
go.
we're gonna
Well, this stuff
help you
happened
refine
over
for
3
you.
years,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, and some of it is gonna be, you'll be surprised, I think, of some of the things that we are going to consolidate together into things that we can make into an initiative and push out.
So going back on the SWOT analysis that we
Mhm.
did, right, that should be really driving what these goals are. I would say, there's a definitely need on that increased transparency with the public. It's also like assets, listed assets, the amounts, age of things, and so on and so forth. I think that's all part of what needs to be included into that last item. Just my thought. I don't have it in front of me here, but if you switch back to that, the SWOT analysis here, from maybe the rest of the board can take a look at this and generate, what we think are kind of more goals that capture a theme.
I think the theme is messaging. I think this year it's all about tooting our horns when we do something well and trying to get the word out when we can, as early as we can, about something that might not be going as well, and just be owning it all the time.
I had something else on messaging too, which is work on improving citizen communication too, whether that's public input at our board meetings or correspondence, or I feel like there's, we've talked about this in the past. I think since the pandemic and we went on Zoom, there's been some changes to whether it's perceived or real of how the public is able to communicate, not necessarily the staff, but within public meetings. And I think we're getting better with that in terms of transparency with, filming all our meetings and whatnot. But I think the messaging goes both ways, is my point. So it's like us getting information out, but making sure that we're also receiving the information we need to receive. And there seems to be sometimes like piecemeal information that comes in is like, someone hears something, and I just think it can be improved upon. I also want to put the Grafton Upton Railroad on there and establishing I'll try to make this a SMART goal, more specific, like establishing an ongoing relationship with the Grafton Upton Railroad. And I guess what I envision is, I hate establishing new committees, but I don't know what's in place right now. I don't know how many conversations you have with GR. I don't know if there should be someone coming from those neighborhoods that should be part of a committee and a voice. I don't know if the fire department, what involvement the fire department has, but I feel like that is a huge threat to this community, and it's talked about all the time. And they come in front of the board maybe once or twice a year, and we have a conversation, and then things move on. And I'm really happy that, we did have that conversation about the federal litigation. But that's it. And when I drive through that area of North Grafton, or even through like behind our brand new library that has all that propane that could it's a real threat to this community. And I feel like, I don't know if we can do anything about it necessarily, but it's certainly not going to hurt us to have a better communication and more established relationship with them that's ongoing. And it doesn't matter who's on the board, who's on the fire department, who our TA is. It's just an ongoing relationship to try to mitigate some of those threats that we have. And we hear it again and again from the public, specifically who live up near, those neighborhoods in North Grafton. And I feel strongly about that.
Well, there's nothing you're gonna do about it.
No.
But the safety plan
Exactly.
is key.
Yeah.
And the safety plan, there's a safety plan for the propane farm, which takes into account the 3 tanks or the 2 tanks, whatever it is. But the amount of propane that's stored on the tracks and up in here. There's no safety plan for that. So I think what we did tonight and what we heard from the fire department tonight was very, very encouraging. And I think that, the officers will get on that situation right away. They're really the only ones that can do anything about it.
But even so maybe the goal is to the fire department. But
In that
even
quiet zone.
in the quiet zone and, the noise that goes on there, I feel like it should be an ongoing conversation more than we have time for or do. So.
I'm just saying, going back on that, we have done some components of that. I think that's part of the messaging at the college. We signed the Precinct Map application in support of it. I think there was another grant through Department of Transportation that looked at creating that additional siting, to eliminate the constant trains from traversing to blue car.
Yep. And then the EPA, I mean, there are things that come up, but it's going to be ongoing. I don't think we have, from my knowledge, I don't think we have anything well established in town for a federal railway that runs literally through our town.
And I think we probably, we need to, right. I think that's important. I think we have to figure out how to increase communication. There's the common conception is that the cars behind the library are propane, but they are not.
Sometimes they're propane, but they're mostly.
I've yet to find one that's propane. So when you look at the tag that's on them, I think propane's 1075 or 1086. They're all 3075s usually, which is asphalt.
No, asphalt coal tar.
Coal tar, right? And all of their propane there might be more than what's in those tanks or the 2 or 3 you see there, but they're usually, well, I haven't found them to be outside of the yard at any point, sitting on site. And so I think that's not being communicated well. So how do we create a system where they're adding their information out to the public, but we're also receiving that information and having an open dialogue about, and I'll give you an example. I've heard that Grafton up the railroad has offered training to police and fire and they haven't come. I've also heard that, they never offer training. At this point, it doesn't really matter. They said they want to offer it. We say we want to have it. Let's just make that happen. And so it's just having that ongoing discussion so that those things come up. And how do we codify that in a way, whether it's a working group of, somebody from the select board, the TA and someone from the fire department. And once a quarter, we go over to GURR and spend an hour, have a conversation. Is that what it takes? I don't know. And I think we'll take your suggestion of establishing the relationship and go to our staff and say, we think that looks like.
And it does go back to the sort of the citizen communication that I'm talking about. So it's both ways, like you're saying, we are doing a lot, but the public may not know it. We're not getting that information. So by being able to communicate that out, and that can't all be on you. I mean, you wouldn't sleep.
Right.
So there just has to be a better process for this messaging, is what it comes down to.
So what if we did a public hearing every 6 months and it was just anything you guys want to bring up to us? It's not a guarantee there's going to be a conversation. It's not a guarantee there's going to be an answer, but it's a guarantee we're going to hear you and we'll be able to go back and adjust it and try to, is that?
Like a listening session?
Yeah.
I think we should be doing that anyway. But
No, but I'm saying
I
that
think
would
more
help.
of a working group is like, oh, if there's another grant available to help with the quiet zone that, we're able to know about it, take action on it.
Right.
Where I don't know how much this board, yes, we can hold public meetings like that, but
I wouldn't limit it to just the railroad. What I was saying is what you were saying earlier about just any information coming in.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, in terms of citizen communication.
Correct.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
We should all watch
And again,
that.
we haven't done that because of COVID, and that's why I brought it up. It's like in the past 2 years, the communication is, in my opinion, just kind of drifted because people haven't been out in public. Now we are again. But it's like social media or nothing,
Right.
right?
Have you ever watched Park and Rec?
Oh, yeah, it's my favorite.
Their listening sessions are great.
Mm.
That's what I envision every time
Yeah.
you see that. Work, improving citizen communication. One thing that I would like to see the board build on is better use of our code red system. There's a lot of governmental notices that people can sign up for that are not emergent. So like we used it for mosquito spraying, right? We can target just that neighborhood. You can do that with a lot of things. And I think it would be good for the board to push that top down to get more department heads involved in thinking that way, that, you know, I'm not picking on Paul because I think he does a good job of communicating, but sewer line break. Where is it? The road's gonna be closed. Takes us a minute and a half to push that information out to 4,000 cell phones via text message. You know, we didn't use it during the flood, and that would have been, I think, pretty key. Or did I use it during the flood? I don't remember.
Maybe that foul odor,
What's that?
maybe that foul odor that
Yeah,
comes across
exactly,
town.
exactly.
That would have been good.
Yeah, exactly.
So is that something that, you know, even at elections and town meeting, it's just something else we can be putting in front of them while they're there? I imagine a lot of people that attend those are signed up, but you know, it's just a good reminder for them to even help us
It is.
spread the word.
The nice thing you can, like I used to, and we just haven't done it here yet because I'm new and trying to get a handle on everything, but we used to, all the town meetings, I would send out a notification via email that said, don't forget town meeting is coming up, and attached to it was the warrant. Like I can just send that out to 3,000 email addresses. You know, it didn't drive any better attendance, but at least we were doing something, you know, but I'd like to see us use that more. I think we have a lot more capabilities.
That last line with the ongoing relationship, you could actually put that down again in ongoing relationship with Tufts University. Because increased communications, they do have threats over there, as far as the VDL and some of the other facilities that they have there. And there's not enough information, not that they're, you know, not saying. anything,
Right,
it's
no.
that we're not taking that step to get this information.
I think it's tough, so not very much.
What was that?
It was just-
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to see the board try to figure out a way to support affordable housing. And I don't know if it's gonna be specific or measurable, but I think they are an autonomous group and there are ways that we can offer support. I don't think it needs to be limited to 25 Worcester Street. And I don't know if that means meeting with them. You know, I know we have representation on the trust, but I would like to just support them so we can finally get some affordable housing projects completed.
I think the biggest thing that the trust could use is messaging.
Okay.
And that's maybe something that we could ask Chris about what's the best way to do that. Certainly after our last meeting, we had a ton of public input. Most of it was on 25 Worcester Street, but you know, I feel like the quality of the conversation would have been different had we been having more consistent messaging around affordable housing in general. And you know, 25 Worcester Street or whatever the first initiative that the trust really takes on, it's going to be critical to make sure that that's successful, that it's messaged well, that it's received positively, that it's an inclusive process. And there's a lot to that. It's affordable housing is really, really difficult to build in Massachusetts anywhere. So yeah, I agree with that. I think that makes sense. So maybe some messaging. I don't know what else, but maybe that's something to ask Chris about, you know. Or maybe we could bring the,
That's a
you know, the
collaboration
trust
with
in
the trust.
and have a discussion.
I think what we would do is send out your goal to that trust and to the trust and say, how do you think, what do you think the board needs to do to help, to accomplish this goal?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it, because we can come up with ideas, like, again, meeting with them, collaborating with them, but if they came back with, you know, like you're saying, messaging, what else? What will help? That actually my last goal. But it kind of goes along with it, because I mentioned affordable housing is one of the opportunities, and providing additional either tax relief programs or anything to reduce the burden on seniors and other vulnerable populations. So that definitely goes along with affordable housing, but also I'm just not, I think asking maybe Barbara, the senior center, like, is there anything else we can be doing to help these vulnerable populations in our community?
So we have our tax relief committee.
Yeah.
But I think that's been under discussion. One of the things I talked to Representative Bradian about was to see if I could work with his office potentially to up the income levels that make it available for people to get tax exemptions, for example. So those income levels are like, it's extremely limited income. Because I think what the threshold is, and like, I don't know what the specific threshold is, but it's, $20,000-$30,000 in a whole household.
Right.
And if you make more than that, then you don't qualify for exemptions. Can we do something to bump that up to a more realistic, reasonable number to just help more people?
Right.
That, the cost to the state is gonna be almost negligible. The benefit to all the municipalities is going to be huge. So, that might be an avenue that we could pursue is to work with our state representatives to try to see what's available that might be palatable to bring to the state.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
What about economic development? I mean, we talked
Oh, yeah.
extensively on that, I think, on the first part of this meeting. I want to know, I've got some thoughts around it, but I think we've been talking about this now for a couple of years.
Water, let's figure out what's going on with water. How can we get a different water rate? I know that they've talked about it and they said that they were told it wasn't possible and they ended it. They didn't chase it anymore. I think that's something they can chase a little bit more personally.
Water rate?
Commercial water
Commercial
rate.
water rate versus residential.
The involvement of our economic development committee too. I mean, I think we had talked about that, like revamping their charge, talking about the position. And we put that off because you had just started and then Ray came on board and we're sitting on the economic development committee. But, I would like to know how to better utilize them. What's that? Oh, okay.
When I have board meetings that go real late and I just start really just nodding out to just get myself ahead.
That's great.
Is that a real one or a private one?
I thought those were under.
No, they're real.
Are you allergic to something?
Yeah, shellfish and bees,
Local government.
local government.
Yeah.
People.
Goals meetings.
Well, I haven't seen a bee in a while.
No, but I did go out to lunch today and never know what's in.
But I did have them winging clam sauce.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, that wouldn't go well with for me.
Yeah, so just, figure out how to better utilize the committee. William captured it. And, and potentially even John's position. And just, again, this is something that maybe it doesn't need revamping, but we can start with the low hanging fruit. We have a staff member, we have a committee.
So we're gonna take this back to John, but one thing that I think the board might want to consider is to define economic development.
Yeah.
Yep. South Grafton is awesome, but is that?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, is that economic, is that what you're asking him to do, or them to do, or whoever? Is that what we're supposed to be working towards, or?
Right.
And we talked about this a little bit of the, do we swing for the fences? Do you want to see us retain? Like, we've had that conversation, but to
Yeah.
codify that in some
Yep.
meaningful way to give staff the direction they have.
There was a split between both of these roles, and this was something that I had a problem with earlier on, where you know, economic development just worked on existing more on the SMB side of things. And then the prior town administrator worked on attracting or working out deals on either getting net new or developing commercial property. But in other words, the one committee I thought that should be setting the policies and the goals wasn't really part of that discussion. It was kind of done whimsically. You know, it just came across that way. I'm sure there was a plan. It wasn't really communicated. I couldn't tell you, what is your goal?
Yeah.
What is your goal for the next year on developing new commercial property? Just what do we need to do to support you?
Yeah.
Do you need 10 people? I don't know.
Yeah, and what can we take off your plate to allow you to do it? Exactly.
Right.
And Evan, I think now that you've stepped into your position, that would be, it would, I'm speaking for myself here, but it would be helpful to you, for you to help us define what economic development is internally, like what, you know, who are the best people in place to do what? And what's missing that we need. And then I think the board can concentrate on, okay, we have a gap here and we need to fill it. That comp in class, will that come back with a job description for John?
Yeah, he's in it.
Yeah, you can.
So that, once that comes back, that would be helpful too, to say, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and we're gonna be reviewing the draft of it. So basically, they take 10 other towns and kind of mold it around what we said the job does in the interview, so.
We need to be more aggressive in economic development, absolutely. Where, you know, in the grand scheme of things, we're doing nothing. Nothing.
But we need specific
No, I know.
S.
Well, and I don't think that's true. I think we're doing a
Yeah,
lot.
I think so.
I don't think it's all defined as economic development necessarily. It's not in a sort of nice package. But there's a lot that's going on for sure.
Right.
It's
Well,
just,
and it depends on how you define it, right?
Right.
So 27 Upton, 8 Pine, huge projects.
Oh, yeah.
Are they economic development? I would say
Yeah.
yes. You know, 244 Worcester, that moves forward, but then you've also got these sites around the town that the town could probably do more to market or to get them closer to being saleable, right? So you've got 124 Westboro Road, right? Is it 124?
Yes.
That's just a wooded lot. So some communities will clear that, make it pad ready. So that you, the developer, come in and you just start building. There's small things. And are we gonna talk about those things? I think those are good questions to put to John and Chris and say, what can the board be doing to support you? And then also all of us thinking about.
And I think at this point, what would drive them an aggressive plan,
Right.
you know, and what can you get behind?
Yeah.
Could be
I mean,
behind.
if you read the paper, you read the Globe and the Telegram, which I do. Everything around us is getting. They've got this, you know, ribbon cutting over here, they're doing this groundbreaking over here, they're doing this and Millbury, they're doing that and something. I mean, something is kind of like the quiet little economic development storm over there.
I know,
And-
I'm
and-
all on 146.
Yes,
It is
and
blown up.
we don't have 146, but we have opportunities.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel that we're going after these.
I feel like South Grafton has so much potential where the
Yeah.
old mills were, that whole development.
I mean, I had a developer who was looking at the property, the old press wheel.
Yeah.
For a healthcare facility. And it fell through. But they were very, very interested in putting in skilled building, and assisted living, memory care, and everything down in there, which would have been beautiful. But it, you know,
So-
fell apart.
To that, like, do we go back and ask, you know, planner, you know, economic development coordinator, like, give us 3 targeted areas that aren't under any current action that we could focus on, and what would be something specific, like, well, action activities, how, what's the time sensitivity to doing that? I mean, I think that's a fair way of really having us evaluate, and what do we feel is like, what should be our priority? Should it be that, should the South Grafton location that's, I mean, you know, developed all along the railroad, is they do that whole street over in the next few years?
There's work going on down there, yeah.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
Yep. Well, also, but there's that, what's the address that on, across from
Oh, the
Park.
development going.
Crestwheel, that's what we call it.
Is there a development going in? I think it's just site work right now. He's calling in Phil.
It's remediation.
Right, is it
Okay.
remediation?
Oh,
Okay.
you're talking about Fisherville?
Yeah.
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 But yeah, Chris and I are doing a tour. We've had 2 meetings with 2 different developers, so that's like, I don't know if it'll go, but
And we have a real estate agent on a piece of property across from, now I'm gonna call it called Cosmo, but that really dates me. 124 Westbrook
yeah,
Road,
yeah,
we're out.
right. And I've had,
Has anything?
I've had 4 meetings with businesses about that site. It's just, and I don't want to digress too far, we can certainly follow back up, but what like Mass Business, Office of Business Development and was the Mass Bio we met with to try to track bio and stuff, that what they were telling us is that the biggest driver is not pad ready, it's not even access to the highway, it's access to the workforce. Because workforce is the biggest challenge right now. And so they were particularly excited to see us bringing online 8 Pine because of proximity to, say, 124 Westboro Road and a train station.
Right.
And, you know, now when you're, you know, a biotech company, you want to put a manufacturing facility in, put it right next to an apartment with, you know, 100 units of people that are available to work.
Yeah.
You know, there you go.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, let's push it back to them and say, where do you think you need the most support?
And supporting affordable housing is by proxy of supporting economic development. So that's really good too, right? We can say that.
Absolutely. That's one of our biggest barriers.
Yeah, and then, you know, the other side of economic development too is also taking care of the businesses we actually have. And I don't, you know, is that the job of something like the committee? You know, do we use the Evans and the Johns to go out and pitch the bigger deals, or do we, you know, have, we want to try to retain the small business community that we have as
I
well.
think that's done privately with the Chamber of Commerce though. And that's why you see that successfully done in other communities. And that was one of the recommendations in that North Grafton study that just came back to planning, is to have a Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
And I think that the taxpayers have been helping support that through Shop Grafton, you know, and I think it's time for them to take it on themselves. We've done the framework for them. They know how to do it, and they can expand it and grow it and shape it in all kinds of ways, but it's not something I think it should be funded on taxpayers' dime anymore. I think it's a privately done thing.
Even through an economic development committee.
Yeah, because we're not developing any opportunities, we're supporting. That's an economic support committee, and that's not what we're here for.
Yeah. And that's mostly what they do right now.
Well, yeah, they sustain.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
That's enough.
we can get all this done in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, the great thing is that half the stuff you already talked about, we've already done. So we're gonna say fiscal 23 and then we're just not gonna work it out.
Awesome.
No, one thing I would like the board to consider for a goal is staffing. So I've been here, what, 8 months now? I think our biggest challenge is having enough people or people in the right spots to do the work. And I'd like to review that in the coming year to maybe assess growing that. I mean, we've, and that extends beyond just like municipal center, right? We don't have enough police on the road. We know we're behind. We've had huge population growth and no growth within the police department, or very little. I would like the board to consider bringing back the ATA position. There was one other one we were talking about, Will. Oh, an assistant planner. Full-time assistant planner. I think we need to look at what the goal wants to, what the board wants to achieve, and whether we have enough people to get it done in the time that we're going to do it.
Personally, you know, I would like to see you go through a very similar process that we just went through tonight with the goals. and write down like, you know, what are these threats, what are the options, what are the weaknesses, and outline those. I think for me, you know, that helps me prioritize about, you know, what that everything.
Sure.
I don't know, the rest of the board feels, but that would be extremely beneficial to me to know this is one of the goals that would give me some information.
Yeah, so for example, police, right? I mean, I think typically for a town that borders a city like Worcester, it's pretty alarming how little police, thank goodness, we have such a great police force, but we are probably have half of what would be expected in other communities that border a city like Worcester. I'm not saying that, you know, I'm not trying to knock down Worcester, I'm just saying it's true though.
Or even with 20,000 people.
Even with 20,000 people, I
Two
mean,
people on the road at any given time is
not a lot,
low for.
very low. So,
One officer for 10,000 people is not.
yeah, so, I mean, I guess kind of breaking that down, you know, sort of to Peter's point, like what would the assistant planner be doing that Chris does not have time for, that is, you
Right.
know,
Yep.
would make that position a priority?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I also think on the assistant town administrative position, you've been here 8 months. And I've seen you do everything. A lot of stuff you should not be doing, not that you.
No, I know what you mean.
I don't mean by that.
No, I know what you mean.
All this stuff that you should not be doing. You have more important things to do than running up to the library to make sure the windows painted.
Mhm.
Or, you know, whatever it is, you know, checking out a pipe on George Hill.
Right.
It's really not your job. Now, you've been here 8 months. And you'll eventually roll out of it. But I think the ATA position is needed.
Yeah, I supported the ATA position staying. And I think we've made it work so far, but I also see that William takes on a lot more than what his roles and responsibilities are. So that was something on my list as well.
He's young.
Yeah, he's young, he's got time, and he's only at 78%,
Right.
so.
81.
Okay.
You got 3 points with the vote for this meeting.
So we will do an analysis so that we can provide more data back to the board for that goal, for when you're doing your setting. So we'll do that as part of the, just like we're gonna go to department heads and say, how do we get there? We're department heads too, or I am.
I go to the meeting.
You go to the meetings. We'll come up with a way to communicate that back.
Do you think funding is there to, you know, how would you objectively decide about whether to do the police or ATA? Because they affect you very different, right?
Alphabetical order.
That's awesome. No, I think that would be for us to determine, like, could we afford any of them? And if we do, like, what, you know, what does it look like? What's our priority?
Well, we must be down 6 offices by now.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I think we're only down one.
Really?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, for what?
Oh, yeah, we're
What it
safe.
should be.
We should in theory be at 28 and we're at 21.
Yeah.
At the end of this budget cycle, or by July 1, we'll be at 22.
So we're down to 6.
Right, so I'm doing one a year for 5 years to at least get us to a point where we can start looking at 3 on every shift.
Let's come to know that there's a plan in place.
Yeah.
It might be slow.
Yeah, and it's arbitrary, to be quite honest with you. You know, I'd like to see it supported on more than just my level of saying, chief, I'm gonna do one a year for 5 years. There's a lot of outside forces that can shift to that priority. And if the select board makes that one of their goals, then, you know, it codifies that. This is what we as a community feel is important, and we're gonna do that. And I think it would go a long way with the staff at the police department too, to say, you know, everybody recognizes it. We're working on it.
I would also like to see options for the full-time assistant planner. For example, a part-time assistant planner or a full-time assistant planner / economic development coordinator.
But you're not asking us to respond to these individual requests tonight, right?
No.
So this is just,
This is
can
just
this
our
Throw it
become,
on the wall.
This is, right, can the
Yeah,
board
this become-
codify that in a goal like you did with your other hires? That said, this is a board priority,
we're
figure out how to
gonna
make it.
focus on staffing levels
Right,
and services.
Yeah.
And costs, yeah.
exactly,
That makes sense.
correct, yeah. I want you to agree to fund all of that tonight.
Good, because I'm not agreeing to anything.
I was gonna say, I'd agree to it, this is my last day.
Yeah, this
There you
is
go.
like a big wish list.
Anybody else have any?
Well, we talked about other staffing positions, like a grant writer and a facilities director. Is that not making the cut for,
No, so you have those over here.
okay,
So those are still live. So this is, all of this goes back to the department heads and our meeting and says, and we say. Sorry, I got, there's a guy I grew up with who used to say, so I says to this guy, it says, as soon as I came out of my mouth, I was like, channeling, I haven't talked to him in 10 years. So you already have it here. So part of this is we go back to the department heads and say, we haven't completed these yet. How do we get there? And then here's some new stuff. How do we get there and bring it all together?
are we gonna circle back to this list and see if we wanna drop any off, like, say, we're talking about supporting affordable housing over here, do we really need to talk about 25 Worcester Street specifically here? Is that part of what we're gonna do tonight, right?
Sure. Yeah.
No, I'm asking, were we?
It's up for discussion, yes.
So the ongoing goals, could we change, well, no, I don't, never mind.
So there's another way to do it, and that is when we go to the staff and say, here's the ongoing goals, and here's this, we can come back to you with suggestions of how to combine.
Yeah.
certain things.
I think that's a good approach.
Yeah, I think so too.
There's like improved economic position and
Yeah.
one over here.
Yeah.
Put it
Yeah.
up in December.
Yeah, they're gonna be parallel, and we can.
Yeah.
Go together.
And even like master plan or comprehensive plan along with like the assistant planner position, right? Like how do those correlate or is it?
Right, so they might,
or
well,
not?
they might be two separate things, right? You have a staff doing the plan, but part of your how is hiring this, I don't think that's what, I'm not saying I'm an advocate for that, I'm just saying that would be maybe a how, right?
Right.
You say, well, you were looking at this, how do we get there?
Right,
You need to do this, or get a consultant for the DNI stuff, whatever it is.
One question here that I'm thinking of is there any area that we can identify that directly affects or impacts or supports the community? I mean, a lot of the stuff we're looking at are, I'm thinking of more internal, and I know that ultimately they have effects on the community as a whole, but anything directly community.
Like a parade?
yeah.
Well. you know,
She's
like a
been waiting
parade.
for this moment to bring it up since she moved to Grafton.
Love a
so-
parade.
Just saying. We have an alternate.
You're like waiting for me to say that? You just had
No.
that TV.
Always
Okay,
think of a
Matt
parade.
has something different to say besides the
I love the parade idea,
parade.
as long as the parade can end up at the town bonfire.
Yes, love it, not super sweet.
Love it.
We used to have this.
Yeah.
George Peterson behind his father was right behind the post office. And 4th of July, there was this huge barn in his backyard.
The 4th of July parade is crazy.
It's a long time.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's not very ecologically,
No.
safe.
But you can have a community,
They just invite the
For
entire
sure.
fire department to come.
I think they're gonna crash that party anyways. There you go.
Do love a good bonfire.
So, Peter, I tried to put things like, and that's why like the Grafton Upton Railroad, the vulnerable communities, that like I was trying to think externally too. That's kind of what I come up with.
So maybe, you've got economic development, do we do, as part of that, you know, we were looking at the list earlier of the ARPA stuff that came out of the LRRP.
Yeah.
So is the community aspect of it that?
In there, I agree. I think so.
You know, and not only limited to ARPA, but those type of projects, the streetscaping, the, you know, playground rehabs, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
That's community building. And do we tie that back into economic development as the umbrella?
Yeah, because all of those, I agree, those will ultimately support economic.
Right, you put in a new playground, now you get more people, who live there, more people who live there, need a shop to go to the, it's that.
Messaging.
Yes.
Yeah.
Goes back to message.
Jeez. Sure.
Great.
And also tied into economic development too, and this is like a lower priority, but like just overall aesthetics, are there little things that we can do like on our main road in town to make it more attractive for, again, to like build economic development,
Right.
to make, you know, build community
Do we have a
drive.
garden club in town that does stuff like that?
Yes.
I'm not talking like that, I'm talking about like driving by the abandoned BP station for 15 years and like, what are we doing about that? And just like little, you know, like there are just things that I feel like
Like,
sat too long that
like-
need to move.
But do we own it and can we do it?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought Stop and Shop owned that. So Stop and Shop was on a gas station in there at some point, but I'm not sure where it went.
And that's just a, but
so,
you know what I'm
right,
talking about.
so, community beautification.
Yeah.
Project. And just put community beautification, we'll figure out how to.
So
call
yes,
it.
garden does fit into some of that. I was. kind of
But wouldn't it go, that goes to CPC?
Well, I mean, just like we're knocking down 60 Depot Street next week. Change the contracts, I mean, that's.
Not a lot can happen down there.
Blight, no, but it's blight reduction, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're not depressing the property values of the houses right around it.
Well, we did that up there too.
Yeah, we did, that came out beautiful. You've been through there on Adams Road, that with the split rail fence and the parking lot, it looks
Very nice.
looks really nice.
It's about placemaking.
Yeah, placemaking. Write it down.
Placemaking.
Like I said, everything
We also
that
need
the
a
community
definition.
focuses, it's just like, I just wanna know, like, are any of our small goals like tying that to really improvement
I think it's great.
as part of the. I think a ton of them are.
Yeah.
And the more I'm reading them, the more I'm like, yeah, okay, I can see where that kind of thing.
Eventually, we'll need a 300 committee board, just too far out there.
How far out is that, Colin?
That's 2035.
20.
I think some time.
You go quick. So you're just gonna mention it here and there, I think?
Fantastic. Keep that on our radar, Colin.
Then we're gonna dig up the,
Quick, write that down.
the time capsule. Very good.
Yeah.
I was here when they put it.
Me too. I was a
I was
kid.
here when they did that, the whole.
Did they open it yet?
No, not till 2035.
Oh, there's a Cabbage Patch Kid in there that I cried because I wanted it. So I'm gonna
You were
be-
the little kid crying.
Yeah, that was me.
You can finally get it back.
And I was like, what are they putting in? Yeah. Anyway.
Shirts in great shape.
I think there's a picture of the fire, the whole fire
Was
department.
it 1985?
I don't remember when.
86.
86. I was a little old to be crying about a Cabbage Patch Kid, but that's a different story for a different
I
time.
was only 6. Will was -10.
I was -10. I was trying to figure out a way to work that in there.
I saw you, that's why I beat you to it.
That's why
Back
you're
down to
78%.
Right, that, no, no, just that one thing alone, you're down to 76.
So I was just, I think to wrap this, up, what are our next steps? Obviously, you're gonna need probably more than a week to kind of bring this back, but what's a, it's be time sensitive here on this, right? So what is a good reasonable time we can expect this to come back in front of us with some sort of summarization, for lack of better words?
January?
Well, yeah, what's the process of getting us to actual SMART goals?
So we're gonna workshop that with the select. You're in the department here. Yeah, I'm here right now. Okay, I got it. I'm back up to speed. We're gonna work on that with the department heads to help try to refine some of that. Because I think part of the problem with creating a SMART goal now is that we don't know some of the specifics.
You know, I'm just wondering what the process is to get.
So, or I'm gonna hold a meeting with the department head specifically for that. Let's say we probably need till the middle of December. When's your workshop in December?
The 14th.
It's gonna be the 14th.
So why don't we have that deliverable be the 14th? You could put your goal session on.
Alright, so that's a month out.
Yeah, that gives us enough time.
Okay.
Because January, we're gonna be back into budgets and stuff, so. I'd like to-
Yeah, that's true.
But we also need to schedule some time. Fire department. Search committee process.
Yeah, I'm gonna add
Very
that
quickly.
to the 16th.
We will have, I was waiting until the end of tonight, what they're for.
Yeah, but
next.
with, I was just saying your email, I'm just going back and then throw the charge on there. so-
Yeah, just tomorrow afternoon, be great, yeah, we've got something.
All right,
Good stuff.
good.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you very much for putting it together, appreciate it. This is great.
Yeah, well organized.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Have a good night.